John Kent Superboy and Damian Wayne Robin are the Super Sons, and these are all of their adventures. Welcome to the Comicstorian Full Story Supercut series, where we take full stories and complete stories and put them together into one giant video, giving you everything related to the characters. At the beginning of John's introduction to the DC universe, he was a little younger than Robin, and after a series of events, became Superboy. Everyone loved the two, and DC decided to create a World's Finest style comic for the two of them, and called it Super Sons. Eventually, John was aged up in the Bendis Superman run, and we lost the Super Sons. But we still got the adventures of the Super Sons as told by the two from the future. This video contains all of the Super Sons videos that we have covered here on the channel, but also a bonus video at the end. Wonder Woman had recently been given a daughter named Trinity, and Benny had recorded 3 short stories of her introduction to the Super Sons that was only released to members and Patreons. But I've included it today as a bonus at the end of the video, so be sure to stick around. Now here are the Super Sons. I hope you enjoy.
Now things have been crazy for John. He discovered that he has some powers of his father and that he is now the new Superboy. But today is a normal day at school. He begins to walk outside of his school and he bumps into another girl walking in. He leans over apologizing and she smiles back, telling him her name is Maya. Kathy, John's neighbor and friend, asks Maya if she's a new student at their school, and Maya gets up walking away, telling her, "I'm nobody, just running an errand for my little brother. Later, John." She walks away and reports the situation in her headset. John and Kathy ride home on her bicycle, but as they begin to pass a spooky swamp, John tells her to go on ahead, because he thinks this spooky swamp requires an investigation for Superboy. He walks in realizing how cold it really is, and then he sees a spooky owl, followed by a spooky snake. Both scare him so much that he loses control of his heat vision and he burns up the ground. And then he sees a spooky moose. Suddenly he's picked up off the ground and a blast of energy hits the ground, putting out the fire. He looks up to see what grabbed him and sees a giant bat-like creature. But if you've seen our Robin Son of Batman videos, you'll know that this creature is actually Goliath, his pet. Riding on the back of Goliath is another of Robin's friends, Nobody, and she chastises him for blowing her cover. John begins to feel a sneeze going on, and he informs Nobody that he thinks he may be allergic to, but then he sneezes, and out comes frost breath. With Goliath partially frozen, John and Nobody begin to fall back down to the swamp, with her mask being blown off, revealing that it's actually Maya, and she's in shock. Really? Freeze breath? Goliath breaks free, grabbing the kids before they hit the ground, but everyone falls unconscious. When John wakes up, he finds a needle over his head and he hears Maya tell Robin to chill. Robin leans into the immobile John to inform him, "You're a threat to every living thing on and off this planet, from desecrating my father's moon cave, to torching the Hamilton's countryside, to slaughtering endangered hawks, and incinerating domestic felines." If you're curious about any of that, check out our previous 2 Superman videos. But at that moment, both boys hear a rather demanding voice, one of Batman. "Robin, the Justice League computer was hacked from this location. By who?" "Nobody, father." And Nobody cloaks herself. "Cloaking device don't fail me now." "Enough. Release Superboy now, before." But it's too late as the wall is cracked open and Superman flies in furious. "What have you done with my son?" "Superman, listen. I thought I told you people, John isn't a threat. He's just a boy." As Superman continues to tear through the base, John tries to call out to his dad. "Dad, I'm..." But Superman's eyes glow red. "I need to have a word with your son, Wayne." Batman pulls out a kryptonite batarang. "Robin, get behind me." John runs over. "Dad, I'm okay, stop." But Superman and Batman get ready to fight it out. He can't hear his own son. "Somebody should teach that son of yours some manners. Somebody should teach yours control. How dare you presume?" And John sneezes on everyone, freezing the room over. Superman stops and apologizes to his son. He didn't know that he had learned a new power. And Robin begins to whine that Superboy ruined his computers. Batman turns to Superman, telling him, "I missed a lot of Damian's first steps as well. They were worse. Less ice, more blood, father." Superman sits down with his son, telling him, "We have a lot to go over. Like for starters, who is the shy ghost in the corner?" Maya doesn't know what to do. You're not supposed to see me." Well, Batman begins to run some tests on Superboy to help Superman out, and once they finish, Alfred brings John a root beer. He then takes the boys, insisting Robin introduce John to his pets and show him the dinosaur in the cave. Batman informs Superman that through the analysis, he can tell that more powers are coming, so he advises keeping an eye on the boy. And Superman asks him, "Do you think our fathers had this many questions about us when we were growing up?" "Yes, all good fathers do." Meanwhile, with the boys, Batman introduces John to Alfred, his cat, and then he warns him not to incinerate the cat. Wouldn't want to make mommy cry again. So, John punches him in the stomach. The boys go back and forth battling against each other again, and the animals even get involved as Alfred the cat covers John's face. Damian eventually whips out his kryptonite batarang, and he prepares to stab John with it, until Batman flings another batarang at him, knocking it loose. Both boys look at their fathers and realize, they made them mad. It's time for boot camp. The boys get dropped into a mission without their costumes, because they need to earn them back, piece by piece. Climbing to the top of a snowy mountain, Damian gets his boots and vest back, while John gets his sneakers and jacket, but without the zipper. John asks if boot camp is over, but Damian informs him, no, because it's not boot camp to them, it's a game. And Maya jumps both of the boys. She informs them that if they can work together to get past her, they'll find their badges inside. She starts knocking them around, and Damian insists on fighting her alone. So John blasts his heat vision at the mountain, which causes an avalanche. Maya quickly swoops down on a rock, catching both of them, and all of them land in the forest down below. Damian walks over and sticks his boot on her back, opening up her backpack and taking out his Robin badge along with a map. He then leaps onto the train that the map told him to leap onto and ditches everyone. Maya gets up and smiles at John, handing him his zipper so that he can close his jacket, and he takes off trying to catch the train that Damian ditched them all for. Damian pulls the letter out further, and then he sees the words tag written on it, and that's when Goliath drops in, hitting Damian aside. The train car swings open and a motorcycle falls out onto the tracks as Goliath throws Damian off the train. Conveniently, John caught up to them and jumped into the sidecar just as Damian jumped on the bike and started to drive back to the train. John leaps out to get Goliath's attention by grabbing his ears, and then John and Goliath begin to spin out of control, so Damian crawls up the train until he finds a car with fish in it, and he directs Goliath into it so that he can lock him in the train, and then John can join him. But that's when they see the end of the train tracks coming up. Damian and John have no idea what to do, so Damian calls out for Goliath to save them, except now Goliath is a little busy eating fish. So John throws a fish out for Goliath to catch, just as Superman is swooping in to save the boys, just in case. Luckily, they didn't need him as they gained control of Goliath and they flew off into the sky. Batman radios Superman telling him, John is pretty resourceful. Yes, but only on his own. We'll give them one more chance to work together. With them safely on Goliath's back, both boys sit down and wait for the ride back to Gotham. Damian says that he's kind of hungry, so John offers him half a granola bar, and Damian tells him that he'd rather starve than eat it. Then his stomach grumbles, so he accepts it and the boys go to bed. John asks him, do you think our fathers want us to become brothers in arms? Worse, friends. Do you think? Never. Yeah, right, never. As they get closer to Gotham, they find the last of their father's games, with a hurricane kicking up off the coast. Both the boys try to tell Goliath which way to go, which confuses him, and they get swept up into the winds and thrown down into a garbage barge. Superman hovers down, disappointed in the two of them, and he tells them that they can find their own ways back to the Batcave, where we'll be discussing what to do with your capes, since you didn't earn them back. But when they get back to the Batcave, they see a large mess, and various villains' DNA have been broken open, and what appears to be Clayface. Both boys get knocked back when they see their fathers captured. Superman tells Bruce that this is risky, but Bruce looks at him and tells him, look, it's working. The boys get up, and they begin to repeat the same line. It is Alfred and our dads. It's up to us to stop it together. So together, they beat on it, blast it with heat vision, and work on a strategy that requires the two of them to be a team. As brothers in arms, members of a team, and as friends. Alfred then walks over and presents the boys with their capes, and announces to their fathers, they are the Super Sons. As the super family, the Duffys, sit at their home watching TV, Reggie asks his brother Archie if he can have some of his popcorn. Archie says no, he already finished his share, but as Reggie reaches and takes some anyway, Archie tells him sure, take the whole thing. Reggie says, man, I'm sure cold and uncomfortable. And both his mother and his sister Sarah get up to give him a blanket and a pillow. And after a few moments, Reggie gets up telling them, guys are the best. How about a group hug? With no one getting up right away, Reggie shouts, group hug! So everyone jumps up and huddles together, and he says, we're the closest family ever. Meanwhile, over in Hamilton County, little Jonathan Kent yawns as he walks to the bus stop in the snow. The bus pulls up and John sees an old man and he asks, where's our regular driver? And the old man says that Pat is sick, so he's filling in. John heads inside and he sits down with his friend Kathy and they talk about the book report that they had the other night when John hears some of the other kids laughing as they pick on another student. John gets up and Kathy whispers, don't get involved. And he tells her, I cannot sit here and do nothing. John tells the bullies to just stop it, and the bullies ask, who are you supposed to be, Superman? And then they start shooting him with spitballs. But before John can do anything, the bus driver shouts for everyone to knock it off and return to their seats, which John quietly does. After school, John tells Kathy and the others that he has a plan. They're gonna have a snowball fight to show those bullies. As soon as the first snowball is thrown, all of the kids join in pelting each other, and the bullies decide that it's time to up their game. One of the bullies throws a snowball, hitting Alan in the head, but everyone sees that there was a rock in it, causing Alan to bleed. The other bullies start to make more snowballs with rocks, and John takes off his glasses to blast it, but then he sighs, putting his glasses back on. His father told him not to use his powers out in public. The bullies get ready to throw it again, and they notice a giant shadow forming over them, and a giant snowball falls out of the sky, crashing on them. John looks up to see the substitute bus driver. While all of the kids head back to the bus, John runs around the corner to see the bus driver is standing there, and he asks, "What are you doing at my school?" Damian Wayne pulls the mask off, stating, "I was bored. Really, just wanted to see how the other half lives." John tells him, "You don't have classes?" And Damian tells him, "No, I'm homeschooled. Remember this?" As Damian holds up another mask, John asks, how can he fake being a substitute teacher? Later that night at the Kent household, John sits with Clark and Lois playing cards, telling them what happened today at school with Alan. And Clark and Lois tell him that they're proud of him for standing up for what was right. But as they do, Lois says that by the way, she has 3 aces, so she wins. Clark's communicator goes off, and John asks, how does she do that all the time? Clark answers the communicator and quickly changes, telling everyone, there's a league thing. And he kisses everyone goodbye. He flies off, and Lois tells John that it's time for him to get to bed anyway. As John gets ready and starts to crawl into bed, he begins to hear a voice calling out, "Did you remember to floss, Johnny boy?" John jumps up with his heat vision, and he asks Damian if he's crazy. He could have totally just blasted him! After almost getting caught by Lois, Damian jumps inside and tells him, "Look, since our fathers are out, I decided to let you join me in an investigation." John asks, "Is that so, huh?" Damian goes on, "There's been an assorted amount of break-ins and hacking attempts over at the LexCorp facilities. So what is your name?" John says John, and he says, "You should already know that." And Damian says, "No, it's Superboy." Which means, forget about going to bed on time. Let's go get ready to be super. A short while later, over in Metropolis, Damian swings to the next building as John leaps, and Damian tells him, "You still can't fly, can you?" As they both reach their target, Damian tells him, "There it is, LexCorp, let's hurry." The boys quickly hurry over and they begin scaling the building, but before they can get too high, a voice tells them, "It's horrible weather for breaking and entering." They both turn back, and Lex Luthor asks, "Is there something I can help you with?" And John nervously says, hi? The boys hang on the outside of the building, and John says, "Oh God, I'm gonna be in so much trouble." Damian says, "No, this is perfect." Lex asks, "What are you doing here? It's a school night. Shouldn't you be in bed? I want you off of my building now." Damian tells him, sure. And then he grabs John's leg, pulling him off. As John falls, Damian yells out, "By the way, the kid can't fly!" Lex snaps the cable that Damian is on, and he tells him that he suggests holding on then, because they're going for a ride. Damian quickly fires another hook while Lex rushes down to catch John. Before hitting the ground, Lex tells John that you have a great deal of explaining to do, so you better start by telling me who you are. John kicks back, knocking Lex away, telling him, "We're nobody, okay? Nobody!" As John drops to the ground, he takes off running down the alleyway, and Lex shouts for him to get back here. Lex flies by grabbing John, and John says, "Look, we're just a couple of stupid kids. This is all a prank, all right?" And Lex tells John, "If that's the case, why is your friend planting explosives in my lab?" And John asks him, "What are you talking about?" But before he can even finish, Lex rockets back into the lab, and they both see Damian planting explosives. Lex fires a blast, destroying the bomb, and he asks, "Was that really your plan? Because now is where you tell me why you're trying to blow up my lab." Damian smiles, telling him, "I'm giving you to the count of 5. And then the entire room starts to beep with many more explosives. Lex shouts, "Stop!" And Damian runs through, sliding between Lex's legs, and he tells John, we're leaving. And the two escape back outside, where Damian throws John onto a rooftop, telling him that Lex should have figured out by now that those really weren't explosives. Once Damian lands, he begins tapping away on his tablet, and he tells John, "I have made a terrific distraction." John runs over, grabbing Damian, telling him, "You just need to leave me alone. I should have never let my father start that training with you." And John goes on, "You think you're such a super detective? Lex caught us instantly. You couldn't even make a halfway decent Batman." Damian holds up his tablet and he says, "It's downloading LexCorp security logs." And then he yawns, "But you're right, I'm better." A little while later, after getting some snacks, Damian holds up the tablet, telling him, "I got it, just watch." And on the screen, an image of Reggie pops up, and it shows him working on an android, and after doing whatever it is to it, the feed cuts out. Damian then tosses the tablet, telling them, "It's gonna take me a week or so to go through that data, but I will get to the bottom of whatever is going on." And John tells him, "You could do that, or you could just watch it in super speed." John holds back up the tablet, telling him that the kid broke in was seen in 4 places at the same time. Damian snaps back the tablet, telling him, "So he's cloning himself." And John walks off, telling him, "You should just get your Teen Titan friends to help. You really don't have weeks to figure out who that kid is." Seconds later, Damian says that the kid's name is Reggie. He may not have super eyes, but he's got Batman's facial recognition database. So there's no going home yet. The two speed off on Damien's bike, and Damien explains that Reggie and his entire family were powered up by the Amazo virus. The Amazo virus was a synthetic plague created by Lex using the power-stealing android Amazo. Only 5% of the people affected with the virus were able to keep their powers, and in this case, the entire family did. Once the two sneak into a warehouse, John says they should probably call in their dads, and Damien tells him, no, we need to do this for ourselves. While Damien starts looking through some of the papers in the room, Damien mentions that there's an article that says that the family disappeared after a fight with each other. John looks around and says, oh my god! And he sees the dead family members. He shouts, I'm calling my dad! And Damien grabs him, telling him, this is my case, so we're going to. But John smacks him into a window, telling him, you're crazy! People are dead! And he leaps out of the warehouse. Damien just stares at him leaving and tells him, fine, be a crybaby, leave, I got work to do. While Damien continues the investigation, he sees that there's someone missing and out in the woods. John finds that someone, and as they both continue their work, the images of their fathers appear behind them. Moments later, the two boys are fighting against their father's counterparts, and as they fight, they begin to notice that there's no way that this is their fathers. It has to be androids. John readies himself to blow up the Batman bot, and Damien's body comes crashing into him. He tells him, nice catch. I was thrown from the warehouse by a bucket of bolts dressed as the world's worst superhero. Damien then says, I should have known that you didn't run off like a baby. And John shouts, I wasn't scared, plus that rusty version of your dad is attacking me. The boys begin to argue and bicker again, shoving each other and wrestling to the ground. As the robots of Batman and Superman watch, they then hear John ask, now? And they both jump up out of the dust shouting, now! As they both lay into the daddy bots, the bots grab them and begin to crush their heads, and another voice shouts, drop. John says, that's right, forgot to mention I found a girl. Sarah stands up pointing to the ground and she says, I said drop. The bots release the boys and then they fall to the ground. Damien tells Sarah that you better have some answers for me. And John tells her, just ignore the little guy. What's going on over here? Sarah tells them that there will be more. They need to get out of here. So John picks Sarah up and puts her on his back. And Damien leads the group back to his bike, stating, of course we're gonna trust a strange girl immediately. John asks her, how did she know what to do back there? And Sarah tells him that she can control machines. It was her gift from the Amazo virus. Damien goes on explaining that Amazo was an old enemy of the Justice League. He's an android programmed with the artificial versions of the League's various superpowers. Last year, Lex released a synthetic version of the programming as a human virus. Thousands were exposed and provided powers before the deadly side effect kicked in. Sarah says that out of the 3% that lived, her and her family survived. So they used their powers to help out with the town, and her brother Reggie, well, he was never nice. He used his power and he multiplied himself, and it also split his mind. Around that time was when Reggie learned that there was an Amazo armor stored up at LexCorp, and after stealing it, he was able to split himself into these superpowered Amazo creatures. Each duplicate is able to mimic a superpower that they've been exposed to, and as the group goes on, the bots they fought begin to change and reconstruct themselves into the boys. And it begins to replicate them. Up ahead, the three reach the bike, and John says they need to call in the Justice League, and Damien tells them, no, we can do this. John tries to say that the Amazo virus is way stronger than them, and Damien pushes John back, telling him, stronger than you maybe, but I'm the world's greatest hero, and this girl needs my help. John says, whatever, I'm calling the League. And Damien uses his grappling hook to stop him, so John shouts, all right, Dork Knight, I'm calling your dad. Damien kicks John down, telling him, like hell you are, and the two go back to fighting at each other's throats. Sarah grabs her head, stating that she can feel him retaking control, but while the boys argue, there's an explosion next to them, and they look back at the wreckage to see that that was where the bike was. And Sarah is now standing there with red eyes, and John asks, what's happening? Sarah's voice begins to change, and Reggie tells them, you've escaped my prison. This girl was able to get outside, but now I'm in control again. Sarah's voice changes back as she shouts, it's my brother! He's been creating copies of the family and killing them over and over again. Reggie's voice comes back through and he says, and now it's time to come home. And Sarah's body begins to melt. Just then the Damien and John bots jump out. Damien says, all right, I'll admit it. Maybe in retrospect, we should have called in our fathers. John says, thanks, that's nice to hear. And Damien clarifies, maybe we should have. As John holds on to Sarah, Sarah throws out her arm shouting, now! And the bots begin to explode. She shouts to them to hurry and go find the real versions of them. She'll buy them some time. As the two begin to run, more bots begin to chase after them, and John says, so I saved a girl who was really a superpowered robot who was actually on the inside a real girl on the inside of that. And Damien tells him, those super senses are sure coming in handy, aren't they? Damien jumps grabbing a tree and he swings back, cutting off one of the John bots' heads. And John grabs him, telling him, we really don't have time for this. Damien jumps on John's back and they start to rewire some of the circuitry. And after a few moments, he says, I got it. And he tosses the head and tells John to stop. We're done running. It's time for Robin and Superboy to make a stand. As the two get to work fighting back, ripping the bots apart, they all start to gang up on them, and Damien shouts, we just gotta hold out for. And John tells him, hang on! And as he goes to help Damian, he too is pulled down into the mass of bots. Later, Damian and John hang upside down, and Damian says that he has to ask, Superboy, do you have any powers? And John tells him, just shut up. As the two argue again, the voice then tells them, there's so much anger. I'm going to assume that you have to be family. Reggie floats out wearing the Amazo armor, telling them, family really sucks, right? And Damian shouts, we are not related. John tells him, we should have just let Mr. Luther handle this. It was his tech after all. And Reggie shouts, like hell it is. The Amazo virus is in my blood. The armor was stolen. The armor enhances my abilities, so I've never been alone. And I could be like how real families should be. As the bots begin to drag in the other Duffy family members, Reggie goes on stating that all they wanted to do was use their powers for everyone but themselves. But now they're here, sedated and depowered, and I've made them watch as I killed their copies over and over. However, the family's really starting to get on my nerves, and it's time to make the dream a reality. Reggie leans down to Sarah, telling her that his little sister has always had a hard time following rules. Sarah leans up, spitting on Reggie's mask, and Reggie continues telling her that I was going to be patient, strike the Justice League down when they were in disarray, but you have forced my hand, and once I absorb all of their powers, the Amazo family will be unstoppable. John tries to struggle out of the chain, shouting, we gotta do something, and Damian stops her, telling him, just wait, we're gonna be fine. I can see the future. And in 3, 2, 1, Luther! Lex Luthor crashes into the building, shouting to Reggie, give me back my armor. John asks, how? And Damian says, I did it when I was tinkering with the bot's head. There's so much to teach you. Lex freezes the boys, telling them that he assumes that they're the ones who brought him here. And Damian says, yeah, the guy that stole your armor plans to take over the world. Lex grabs 2 of the bots by their heads, crushing them, telling them, it won't be this world, I can assure you of that. Reggie runs by hitting Damian, and Damian shouts to Lex, Reggie's the target, so handle him. Lex walks back over, asking, who the hell do you think you are to command Superman? Reggie goes back in to attack again, but Damian grabs Reggie by the arm and flips him onto his back, telling him, I'm Robin, Batman's better half. The two quickly run over to the Duffys, and he grabs them and heads out. But after getting away from the hideout, Damian and John set the Duffys down, and Damian tells Sarah that she's the only one who could do this. Sarah says that she knows. She just needs there to be one target, not 100. John peeks over the rock, stating, looks like the coast is clear, and then a John bot pops up. He blows him away, telling him, I guess my super breath works. Sometimes. Once the family is safe, Damian and John head back to the hideout, and Reggie asks if they really want to be playing. John asks him, are you gonna make another army of you? And Damian scoffs, telling him, you really gotta grow a pair. The liquid metal begins to form and take shape, and just as Reggie shouts it's over for them, he feels a sudden pain. He asks what's happening, and Damian shouts, the pain you're feeling is your flesh being ripped apart by your family. Sarah begins to pull at the machine and begins to rip the exoskeleton off of Reggie, severing the bond. The exoskeleton skitters towards John, and Lex stomps on it, telling them both, that's enough. I'm calling the authorities. He looks down at Damian and John, and he tells them, as far as I'm concerned, you're both delinquents. So if you want to throw yourselves in my mercy, you have 3 minutes. Sarah looks at Reggie and says, you were never a nice brother, but you were never like this. Lex tells her it's because of the constant splitting of his mind, but with her cooperation, he should be able to get the entire family back on their feet. He can put her in a real position to be a heroic youth, unlike the 2 young boys who, but as he looks back, he sees Damian and John are gone, and quietly says, damn it. Off in the distance, Damian says that leaving was a wise decision, and John tells him just to shut up. A short while later, the boys land at the Kent home, and Damian says, what about Gotham? And John shouts, find your own way home. So Damian says that his cycle was destroyed in the battle. You know, the one where we just saved a family. Whatever, I'll just call a new one. John shushes him, telling him, whatever. Next time you need a partner, call someone else, because But before he could finish, a voice from John's window says, ahem. Inside, Lois shouts, you better start talking, and quick. And Alfred folds his arms, saying, yes, I believe ditto is the operative word. I've met my greatest enemy, Pennyworth, and it's boredom. Damian is sitting at the Bat computer, grounded from his latest caper with Superboy. Alfred tells him that he isn't leaving until he serves his sentence. And Robin tells him, my father, Batman, is only punishing me to save face. It's only because Superman and Lois grounded Superboy. This is why I like working with the Teen Titans. No parents are involved. I don't even know why my father bothers maintaining a friendship with Superman. Alfred corrects Damian. Your father considers a lot of things a waste of time, like sleep, but he values his friendship with Superman. Psst, super loser is more like it. As Alfred leaves, Damian hears a rather interesting noise. But hours earlier, Jonathan Kent, aka Superboy, was dealing with his punishment by doing chores in the farm without his powers. Until he used his super leap and Lois wasn't exactly happy with him because he was using his powers when he wasn't supposed to be. That's how being grounded works. You don't get to do what you want to do, and well, as you can imagine, she was kind of mad at him. Superman comes out asking if he just saw his boy using his powers, and John pouts, telling his dad, Mom handled it. Superman tries to explain that they want him to learn to keep his powers under control. They're moving to Metropolis. He needs to get used to that. John tears off his hoodie, super angry. They don't want him to use his powers. He's in trouble for helping people, and they're moving him away from his home? With that, he super leaps away. This is a prison! I just want to be myself! Superboy begins bouncing around Gotham City, just angry and frustrated. Why is it that everyone tells me what to do? And cities suck! This is all Robin's fault. Robin sucks! As Jonathan decides that he's gonna go tell Robin himself, he sneaks into the Batcave, where the two of them find each other. But since it's a surprise, Robin responds properly, throwing Superboy into the giant penny. He turns around shouting, "Intruder!" throwing his batarangs at Superboy, which all land in the penny as Superboy is yelling back, "It's me, you idiot! Stop throwing stuff at me!" Robin walks over, pointing his finger into Superboy's head. "You could be an escaped Amazo clone that we missed." And Superboy slaps his hand away. "Cut it out! It's me!" As they walk around, Superboy explains that he's just tired of everything. They're forcing him to move, they're punishing him, and they're yelling at him. And Robin tells him, "You're wasting your potential. You should be embracing the change instead of moping around the Batcave." They go back and forth about Batman and Superman and who's better and who was crying last time they hung out. John says that it was Robin. Which ends with Robin looking Superboy in the face. "We are not friends! Why are you here?" And John makes a fist. "I never said we were." Robin slaps his fist away, so Superboy throws him across the room. Robin fires a grappling hook, so Superboy leaps into the air to meet him. Robin then throws dozens of batarangs, which all bounce off of Superboy as he goes in to hit Robin. Except Robin, he's a trained assassin, and he kicks John in the face. John grabs him and throws him down, but Robin catches himself. Then when he looks back, John has a giant computer thingy, and he hurls it at Robin. Then he lands kicking Robin in the face, so Robin grappling hooks away as explosions go off all over the Batcave. John takes a swing and Robin leaps over it as they go in for the final hit. And that's what Alfred calls out, "What's going on?" John runs off to hide where Damian pointed, and Alfred walks down with 2 plates. He looks around, only seeing Damian, and then simply, without pause, says, "I cannot believe my life has come to a place where I have to say this." He looks at the dinosaur statue that Batman has, and it has a red cape hanging out of it. "Please step out of the dinosaur's buttocks." Both John and Robin sit down to eat their meal, and Alfred asks Jonathan why he's joined them. Damian leans back in his chair. "Oh, he came to complain," which leads to John snapping, "Shut up!" and Damian telling him, "No, you shut up!" Alfred explains that he watched their fathers go from being enemies fighting over the stupidest things to eventually becoming trusted allies and then friends. There's nothing better in this world than a friend who's gone through what you've gone through. John simply says that he just really doesn't want to move away from Hamilton County. Cities stink! You can't be afraid of change. It's going to happen no matter what. And that's when Batman and Superman arrive. John demands to know where they were, and Robin calls it out. "Diabolical! You were listening in on our conversations!" So John looks at his dad asking the question, "Is it true? Were you and Batman arguing all the time?" "That was before Damian's dad and I discovered how much we could relate, son." Batman chimes in, "Like looking after children who just try to pummel each other." And Damian chimes in, "And I'm sure you weren't the least bit curious as to who would win." Superman grabs a piece of bread while Batman pours himself a drink. "Who do you think would win if we fought, Bruce?" "Me. But I'm stronger, and I can fly." Me. "I think your cowl's too tight, Batman." Superman turns back to his son. "I'm sorry, son, but you're moving to Metropolis with us. There's no way around that." "Yeah, but I don't have to like it." "No, you're right. You don't. But your mother and I were talking, and we've decided that if you are going to be a part of this superhero world, you need to be able to protect yourself from it." He places his hands on the shoulders of both boys. "So we thought that you could train and have your adventures with someone similar to your age." Both boys get super excited and they run off as Superman turns back to Bruce. "I just need to sell Lois on that. Good luck, Kent." With smirks that imply trouble, John asks Damian what he wants to do now. And as they left, Damian tells him, "Remember what I said when we fought Kid Amazo? Ask for forgiveness, not permission." The mud of a dead multiverse, crafted and shaped into a quasi-life by my slowly decaying hands. Hands that until now have only known arthritic failure time and again. This earthen gift from another, counter me. This is my rebirth, a new life's work. When my time passes, I will never be remembered, but my life's work, they will never be forgotten. And in front of us, is an elderly man who just shaped together various beings into life. But over in Metropolis, Lois asks her son John, "Do you have your cell phone, John?" "Yes, Mom! I already told you like 100 times! Don't get short with me or I'll turn your super butt right around. Remember, be back by 10 p.m. on the dot." "Come on! It's Friday! Damien's dad lets him stay out all night!" That's when Superman jumps in as he's eating his ice cream. Damien's dad dresses like a bat and gets hit in the head 28 times every night. Not the best argument there. Lois walks over with Damien's packed snack and kisses him on the head. "Aw, fair point, Dad." So he puts the snack into his pocket and he fist bumps his dad before heading off on his first superhero night of adventuring. Up on the rooftops, he runs over to a perched and waiting Damien. "Sorry I'm late again, Robin. My mom washed my costume, but she put it in with the PJs, so I had..." And as he gets closer, Damien puts up his finger over John's lips, stomping him. "Let's talk. You're a soldier and you're on duty. This is our uniform, not a costume." And with that, they leap off of the building. "Your training begins now." "Training? Who said you were training me?" They make their way to a street where a man is jaywalking, and Damien grabs him by the shirt. "Jaywalking is where it starts. Next thing you know, you're gonna be knocking over liquor stores in Gotham Heights and working for pennies for scuds like Two-Face." And while Damien is striking fear into the hearts of a middle-aged, overweight dog walker, John is petting the dog. "Sorry about my friend. He's a bit wound up tight. Stick to the corners and keep your dog safe, mister." And as he leaves, John asks him, "Are you nuts? I'm teaching you what it takes to bring justice to your streets." And now John is irritated. "Let's get one thing straight. My city already has justice. It's Metropolis, not Gotham, and you're not training me. We're having fun and we're helping people." Damien fires a grappling hook into the sky. "There is no fun. This is why you need to be trained. And say what you want, but that guy is never gonna jaywalk again." As they continue on, stopping purse snatchers and saving cats from trees, they even change an old woman's tire. The night ends, and Damien notices that his team, the Teen Titans, aren't answering their comms. John kind of ignores him, looking out over the city. "Sounds super important if they're ignoring you." "Yeah, well, they're young and raw. I'm working with them, just like I am with you. Maybe one day you can join the Titans." And as John reaches over at the weird green cat, he tells Damien, "Yeah, with you in command, it sounds like a thrill a minute." And that's when the cat informs him, "Aw, you don't know the Teen Titans, Super Kid. It beats being Robin's assistant." And of course, John jumps up from the green talking cat. He morphs back into Beast Boy, and that's when the rest of the Teen Titans arrive. Aqualad, Starfire, and Raven. If you're wondering where Kid Flash is, he was kicked off the team by Robin during the Lazarus contract. We'll link that down below. They quickly round up Robin to head off on a mission, and Robin leaves John to find his way home. John longingly looks as Damien walks over to his team and begins to spout off all of the readings and orders to them. They all begin to load up into their jet, and John just stares. That's when Starfire asks, "Does your friend want to join us, Robin?" Robin coldly tells her, "No, this is Titan's business." They literally leave John in the dust as the jet kicks it all up and flies off. Starfire continues though, "I'm just saying, it's a bit weird that you did not ask your friend to join us." "Seriously, Starfire, which word in Teen Titans are you struggling with? He's 10. Raven tells them that she found the readings of where these weird signals are coming from, and they head over to the building on the radar. Landing, they all walk out, and Robin begins to spout out orders, and once again Beast Boy informs him, "You gotta work this stuff out with us ahead of time. We don't know what you're saying." Back in Metropolis, John is leaping and bounding his way back to his apartment his family lives in, since he can't fly yet. He walks into the apartment and Lois tells him that she's proud of him for returning a minute early. Superman has gone off to a Justice League meet, and she's going off to the Daily Planet. A state senator got arrested selling drugs. She then looks at her son, and the Metro News had some postings about some colorfully dressed boys stopping to save a cat and help people around the city. "You know anything about it, John?" John sadly tells her, "They're uniforms, not costumes, Mom." She still smiles, leaving the house proud of her little boy. And John, well, now he's feeling left out as he lounges on the couch watching television. Is he a hero? Or is he just a costumed little boy running around the town? Back with the Teen Titans, things begin to ramp up rather quickly because as Raven is tracking the source, a hand bursts through the wall, grabbing her face, and then walk out two of the villains. "I'm Atom Smasher, and he's Chun-Yal, and we're here to beat you, Titans, so please make it easy on yourselves." Robin slides back behind the fight. "Beast Boy, something big!" And Beast Boy grows into a giant gorilla. Starfire calls out to Aqualad to use his hydrokinesis, and his arms begin to swirl with water and he launches at Chun-Yal. Except, he throws it back at the both of them, knocking them out in one fell swoop. Atom Smasher jumps over Robin, landing on Beast Boy's face, taking him down, and then as Robin lands on his feet, he turns to see the third villain. "Your team is strong, Robin, but new. That's why we wanted to catch you unexpected, because the Time Commander doesn't have time for a long, drawn-out fight." "You read my mind. I was thinking the same thing." And with that, he throws some batarangs, but the Time Commander turns them to dust as they get close. And then he asks Chun-Yal to grab him. As Robin is struggling, the Time Commander walks over and works his magic over on Robin. Which brings us back to the apartment of Superman. John has fallen asleep on the couch with drool falling from his lips and a half-eaten bag of potato chips in his lap. That's when he hears, John, wake up. He gets up rubbing his eyes. Dad, is that you? And the weird older voice says, are you crazy? And then John walks outside to see a very old Damien and an unconscious Teen Titans team. Do I look like your dad? John has everyone come inside and he gives them water as they begin to wake up. Beast Boy turns into a hummingbird and asks John where the elderly leader of the team is now. So John explains the bathroom. Again? An Aqualad fills them in. You've seen those old people in the commercials, right? John goes over knocking on the door to the bathroom. Damien, you okay? He hears nothing and then he presses his head against the door. That's when he hears the flush and the door opens. John plugs his nose as Damien tells him, not a word. Titans, it's time to go! But as he's about to go, he turns around and goes back in the restroom. Not a word. And he slams the door shut. John walks into the kitchen telling everyone that Robin will be a minute, but the Teen Titans inform him that he's going with them this time to help his friends. John bites his lip, trying hard not to smile. And then he remembers what his father told him. And he remembers exactly what he said. Remember what we are helping folks for, buddy. Good people, get involved. And then he looks at Raven. Okay, I'll go. Robin walks into the room. He's in. Titans, let's go. John looks back. You really don't care, Robin? I'm too old to care. Let's go. So Beast Boy turns to John. You want to do the honors? Titans! But before he can finish the battle cry, Robin pushes him aside. I may be old, but I'm not retired. Titans! And then he forgets the last word. So John smiles and whispers it in his ear. Together. Together! So who is this villain that made these individuals from mud? Why, he's the most magnificent magician of them all, Cracklo. He was granted these powers by himself. The other version claimed to be a centuries-old version from another reality. He gave Cracklo the ultimate gift, real magic, and with this clay he can create anything. In Cracklo's mind, there were images of forgotten villains that he can create in this world, and from here, Cracklo would become a legend. Win or lose, the name Cracklo would be on the lips of everyone, so he would never be forgotten again. The Teen Titans break down the doorway into Cracklo's base of operations with the three forgotten villains standing there. Atom Smasher, Time Commander, and Chun-Yal. But as the Teen Titans stood there, with a cautious Raven, an angry Starfire, a determined Beast Boy, an engaged Aqualad, a finally accepted Superboy, and a very elderly Robin, they throw down the three villains into a foot of water, and Cracklo yells for them to get up and fight some more. But as they do, they tell Cracklo all of this water is weakening their clay bodies. But they aren't defeated yet, as Time Commander freezes the Teen Titans in time and space right there and then. He turns to Cracklo. Master, you need to flee. I can only hold him in place for so long since I've already used my magic on the old Robin guy. Cracklo demands to know where the big league superheroes are. Where is the Justice League? I want to be famous! He runs off asking why the children heroes came back alone. Are they not loved and cared for? And Time Commander tells him, I have no idea, but with them frozen, Chun-Yal and Atom Smasher will make short work of them. Back with the frozen hero, Superboy begins to use everything that he has, and he vibrates in that spot, and with that he breaks free! Go! He shouts, breaking everyone out of the time stop. Starfire asks what happened, and Robin tells her, Superboy happened. As Beast Boy runs off to track Cracklo, everyone else gets ready to fight, and Robin tells Superboy to stay back. But this time, he's not going to be ignored, and he shouts, like hell I will! Then sheepishly, he stops. I mean, like heck, my bad. Robin and Raven chase after Time Commander to get Robin turned back to normal, while Starfire, Aqualad, and Superboy fight it out with the Atom Smasher and Chun-Yal. While at first she grabs both Starfire and Aqualad, Superboy jumps onto her shoulders and begins to beat on her head. Chun-Yal grabs Superboy, so he blasts Atom Smasher with his heat vision, melting the clay girl and forcing her to drop Starfire and Aqualad. Aqualad looks at Starfire. His name is Superboy, right? Yes. We gotta get one of those. Yes, we do. Meanwhile, Time Commander is running as fast as he can until Raven appears in front of him, and as Time Commander falls, Robin looks at him. That's Raven. She's the good cop. Me? I'm not. So let's talk about reversing this aging while you're conscious. Meanwhile, back with Superboy, he clobbers Chun-Yal while Starfire hits him with Star Bolts, and Superboy decides that he needs Star Bolts. He then fist bumps Starfire, and with a final blast, Chun-Yal is melting. As Robin walks back into the room young again, he tells them, Time Commander melted in my hands as well. And Superboy smiles, hey, you're you again! And Robin coldly tells him, and you're you. Life's full of disappointments, jerk! The Magic Man is the key here, right? Did Beast Boy find him? And in walks Beast Boy as a lion with Cracklo in his mouth. Cracklo begins to rant and rave. I had a greater destiny in front of me! You ignorant children ruined it! And Robin and the team stand there. We're not children! We're the Teen Titans! Later, the team begins to suit up in the jet with no real answers. Cracklo said that this was from the multiverse, a version of him from the future. But of course, that's crazy, right? Starfire, Aqualad, Raven, and Beast Boy all tell Superboy that he did a good job and he's welcome back anytime. Raven, in fact, tells him, Don't let Robin's defensiveness mask his real feelings, Superboy. He respects you deeply. We all do now that we know you. You're welcome back to the Titans anytime. With tears of joy in his eyes, he smiles. The Teen Titans want him to help out, but Robin, of course, has to ruin it. Don't get cocky. Her father's a satanic demigod, just so you know. Superboy turns to him. All I know is that I get to join your glee club anytime. They love me! The boys walk into the room where they collected the mud samples, and Robin tells him, I'll follow up. Since you're in training, Superboy. Superboy snaps at him. No one asked you to train me! And Robin tells him, it was implied! You inferred it wrongly! Implied! Yeah? By who? And while they argue about all of this, a doorway begins to open up behind them. One that is about to tear their world apart and show them things that they never even thought possible. A doorway to the multiverse! Before Damian could even finish yelling at Jonathan about training and Jonathan becoming a Teen Titan, the two are pulled from their world by a giant set of tentacles. John struggles, yelling, this was a bit like a booby trap from the Cracklo guy. And Damian says, the Nutty Wizard did say something about a greater destiny, didn't he? Damian then tells Jonathan to heat him up, and Jonathan turns his heat vision to blast away the arms, and a voice calls out, return to life, dirt. A giant head begins to pull out of the ground, shouting, you have taken what belongs to me to another world. Before the giant head can say another world, two young girls, Hardline and Big Shot, come through, destroying the arms and freeing the boys. John and Damian are thrown to the ground, and Jonathan asks, who the H are they? And Damian tells him, I have no idea, but your parents are like a whole dimension away. You can curse here, John. As the two pick themselves up, they see the girls beginning to get overwhelmed, and they quickly jump back into the fight to give them a hand. John begins to focus his heat vision as Damian ties the tentacles together, and soon an explosion goes off, throwing everyone away. John gets back up, telling him, it looks like it's gone, but where did it go? And before anyone can answer, Damian tells the girls, all right, I need answers. Are there a lot of creatures living on this planet? And the girl, Big Shot, says, no, it's the only one of its kind. But you misunderstood. It's not living on the planet, it is the planet. Big Shot then grabs John's hand, telling him, we have to hurry and leave before it returns. So tell your little brother to follow. Damian shouts, asking, why does everyone assume that if you're taller, you're older? And Hardline says, we have to go now. A little while later, as Damian and John follow Hardline and Big Shot back to their village, they give the girls a quick explanation as to how they arrived in this universe. Big Shot says, yeah, if Earth is the name of your home planet, then this is definitely somewhere else. Hardline says that they are prisoners here, and that thing back there was Gardas, sort of a living planet that terrorized their galaxy for a millennia. Once the four of them touch down, John asks, what do they mean that they were prisoners? And Damian says, look, fighting an actual planet is not on our to-do list. We're not sticking around, John. Responding to Damian's statement, Big Shot says, you had no intention of coming here. Gardas, the living planet, was our conqueror. Our home world is called Euro, where its cities are vast and filled with wonders. There are a select few who are gifted with talents and abilities to protect the citizens, and as younger kids, we dreamed of becoming like them. But even as the heroes fought and stopped the villains, there was one that they couldn't. Gardas entered the orbit, and before its mass could even begin to wreak havoc on Euro's gravity, it tore through our world, using Euro's resources as its own. Hardline then continues the story by stating that one of their heroes had helped a handful of them escape using his magic to teleport them before the atmosphere was destroyed. The great wizard Cracklo brought them here, and right now their focus is to destroy Gardas. Damian shouts, wait, Cracklo? That's the name of the guy that we just tracked down here before getting dragged here. Sorry to say, he's no wizard. He's just some loser with some weird clay. He created a bunch of villains from that stuff, and then we had to take him down. Jonathan asks, are we really sure we're talking about the same guy? My dad once told me about alternate dimensions. There could be two versions of this guy, Damian. Hardlight tells him, but their Cracklo had the clay. It was his secret weapon. And Big Shot says, look, this conversation is taking longer than it would seem. We need to hurry and hide. As the four start to head deeper into the broken town, a young boy shouts that he is here. And as they turn back, a faceless sentry reaches out towards the boy. And as Jonathan leaps in to help, he's punched away. Damian fires his grappling estate, and besides the brute strength, he's already seen what this guy can do. The cord wraps around the sentry, and Damian calls out to Jonathan to give him some of that big bad wolf action. Jonathan jumps back in, taking a deep breath, and using his cold breath, he freezes the sentry in place. Hardline runs in, kicking and shattering the creation, and Damian says, your planet has a bunch of this stuff, but it's mostly gone except for what Cracklo had. There's a possible theory that we could get inside before the sentries come around again. Everyone heads inside, and as the little boy peeks over the rock, Jonathan turns back and gives him a thumbs up. Meanwhile, down in Gardas' core, he begins to repeat himself, stating, feed, create, feed, create. More clay figures are being made, and the one that is creating them is the trapped Cracklo. Later that night, Damien returns from some reconnaissance, and he says that there are some differences here, like how he doesn't trust the water supply. But Cracklow, whoever he is the key to all of this. Jonathan tells him that he's sorry, but he has a theory too. We're looking at two different wizards. What if the dumb one that we fought was given the magic mud? Maybe this world's Cracklow assumed that his counterpart was a good guy. Damien says, actually, that's not a bad angle. But why do that? What would be the point? And Jonathan then asks, what about what the girls said? Their planet is filled with it, so maybe Gardas is trying to consume it. Maybe he was trying to starve Gardas. Damien pats Jonathan's shoulder, telling him that's actually a really good idea, especially for you. But before they can go on, a hole is ripped out of the wall, and Gardas appears, and an army of clay figures begin to shout, it's time to feed. Gardas shouts to the boys that he is Planet. The clay soldiers all begin to attack Damien and Jonathan, and just as the two easily finish them off, Gardas captures Big Shot and Hardline. He shouts back to the boys, I am the planet. These creatures are my biomass. They have altered the clay and it will be restored so its life force can be consumed. Damien yells that those are people that you have, people from a planet that you destroyed, and they are ready to fight until their last breath. Jonathan says, wait, don't listen to him, Yogurt, or whatever your name is. We give up. The tentacles come up grabbing the boys, and Damien yells, give up, like hell! But before Damien can finish, Gardas pulls the four of them down to its core, and as everyone is thrown down, Damien asks, why would we give up? And Jonathan tells him, it's not like we're actually going to defeat a planet. We have to do something to save the girls. Just as the girls begin to work on a plan to fight back, a voice tells them that he's sorry to say this, but there's nobody to stop Gardas. Everyone looks over and the girls shout, it's Cracklow! And they begin to run towards him, but Damien says, no, this is the guy from our world. He's the reason that we were pulled here. And Cracklow sighs, stating that he should have never listened to himself. Is any of this even real? Damien grabs Cracklow, slamming him into a wall, asking how about he shows him exactly how real he is. And Cracklow says, no, you're real. The girls tell him that they are not. He knows this because he had created them to fight against him, just claim memories pretending at life. Big Shot says pretending. Their Cracklow is a jerk. This world's Cracklow was a lot nicer. Cracklow tells them no, that's what he, the other me, wanted you to believe. He wanted to give you the most careless, irresponsible gift of all, hope. It all started when he was attempting to perform his final spell, one that would bring him notoriety in a world of flying heroes. The timing must have been perfect because at that very moment, a portal to his counterpart opened. He handed him a cask of clay with a promise that he could create life, and with the few moments he had, he explained everything about the world that he was trying to save. He said that his world was destroyed, and he had remade some of its people from memory. Even their powers could be mimicked. Though Gardas controlled and fed off the clay, anything created would be granted independent thought, and then the portal closed. Big Shot and Hardline looked at themselves, stating that they feel real. None of this can be right. They were heroes. And Damien thinks for a moment and says, you need to save the metaphysical discussion for later and focus on what's in front of you. A mad planet's on its way to use you to invade our world. I have a plan, and it requires everyone to ignore their emotional state and do exactly. Jonathan stops him, telling him, wait, even if everything Cracklow said is true, that doesn't change a thing. These girls helped us when we needed help. Mom taught me that while I may have a hard time describing what a hero is, I'll know it when I see it. Right now, I see it in them. Cracklow shouts that they're just a bunch of kids. They're powerless against Gardas. And Damien covers Cracklow's mouth, stating, these children just kicked your butt on the other planet. I'm sure we can do it again on this one. Big Shot asks what they're supposed to do if they're made of clay. Gardas could just destroy them in an instant. And Jonathan tells them, you do what every hero does the best that you can. Damien quietly says, geez, you sound like your dad. And Jonathan whispers back, I'm gonna take that as a compliment. Suddenly the ground cracks as tentacles shoot up, grabbing everyone, and he pulls Cracklow close, stating, you know how to use the portal. Open it so I can feed. Cracklow begins to say that he needs the children to focus on their homeworld, so he could. But Jonathan begins blasting away, yelling, we're not helping you with anything. Gardas shouts, silence, man-child. And Jonathan asks, man-child? The name's not man-child, it's Superboy. However, as the tentacles grab a hold of everyone else, more clay soldiers appear, grabbing Jonathan and pulling him to the ground. Cracklow fixes his glasses, telling Gardas to keep the super one down. He's the only one with true power. The portal begins to open, and Cracklow says that he will lead Gardas back to their world to feed on the stolen clay, allowing him to conquer countless more planets. The world will alas know the name of Cracklow. As the rest of the portal opens up, everything begins to get sucked in, and Gardas begins to push his way in. He's about to make his way to the main Earth, to the real DC universe. And as he stops short, he discovers he's not able to fit, and he asks Cracklow, what did you just do? Cracklow tells him, the best that I can, and he closes the portal, cutting off the head of the planet. Damien and Jonathan run over to help the girls up, and Damien asks, where did the planet head go? Jonathan tells him that Gardas disappeared, but maybe not for long. Will the girls be able to pull themselves back together? Magical clay flies up and Cracklo shouts that he can fix them. He can make them just as the other remembers them. The clay starts to reform and attach to the girls, and soon the two of them stand back up without even a scratch on them. Cracklo begins pushing the boys towards the portal, stating that they have just a moment. They have to leave now if they're going to make their way back to their world. Jonathan tells him, wait, we still need to fight! And Cracklo says the bioelectric surge that he made will course through the planet's cerebral core for weeks, giving him enough time to make a clay army. Hardline walks up, grabbing the boys, dragging them to the portal, stating, you heard him, now hurry! Before they can go, they would like to say thank you, though, for their kind words and actions. Their world is lucky to have heroes like them. As the four of them hug, the girls shout, time for them to go, and they shove them through. Damien calls back, we'll find a way back! And if Cracklo doesn't save you, then... But Cracklo stops him, stating, he will help the girls from here. Don't worry. As Damien and Jonathan go back to their normal lives, Big Shot and Hardline begin their new ones as heroes. Hardline finishes the molding, and as she steps back, she reveals the emblem to be a combination of both Damien's bat symbol and Jonathan's crest. There is now an entire other dimension of heroes following the example of the Super Sons. Big Shot says it looks like they're open for business, and Hardline tells her good, because the new batch is here. And the first thing that she would like to ask them is, who's ready to save the world? In the busy streets of Gotham, a man walks his dog while checking his phone when a hooded man bumps into him. The man goes back to his phone when he notices the leash has been cut, and as he turns around, his dog, Cookie, is nowhere to be seen. Over in the alleyway, Cookie runs and barks looking for her owner when the hooded man returns. The hooded man pets Cookie, telling her, good girl. Gotham is no place for dogs now, is it? Once the hooded man picks up Cookie, he places her in his van and he drives off. Meanwhile, over in New York, Damien and Jonathan Kent are out on patrol to stop the crooks when Damien asks Jonathan if he's got this. Jonathan tells him, of course, he's super! As the crooks car drives off the highway and crashes into Jonathan, Damien asks, you sure you got it, super? Damien then kicks in the windshield to get inside of the car when Jonathan uses his strength to hold up the car from falling into the crowds below. Once the patrol is done, Damien flies Jonathan back to Metropolis, and Jonathan shouts, that was fun! We make a great team, so high five? Fist bump? Jonathan gets out, and Damien tells him, my fists are only used for hitting bad guys, not bumping. As Damien leaves, Jonathan heads into his apartment when Crypto jumps up licking Jonathan. Jonathan runs over to the news board and crosses off the news article about the bank robbers. He then tells Crypto that tomorrow he's going to be getting to work on that missing animals case. But right now it's pretty late and he's gonna go turn in for the night. As Jonathan passes out on his bed, Crypto looks at the news clipping and he flies into the night. He arrives at Wayne Manor Landing by the barn and he begins to bark as he pulls open the doors. Inside is a pair of glowing eyes. And then he hears... Crypto runs inside, wagging his tail as Bat Cow murls again, and Crypto begins to rub his head on Bat Cow. Crypto barks again, and once Bat Cow knows the situation, she moos back rather loudly. The moos carry on into the manor where the Bat Hounds, Ace and Titus, are sleeping, and the noise wakes Titus up. He heads outside of the barn to find Crypto, and Crypto begins to rustle in his cape for something. Seconds later, he pulls out the news clippings of the missing animals, but before Titus can even bark, Bat Cow is there with his leash. Once Titus is set up, Crypto pulls on the leash and lifts Titus into the air as they fly off. After a short flight, Crypto brings Titus to the DC Investigations building to meet with their old friend, Detective Chimp. Chimp leans up from his bed, stating, "Ha ha! Look what the cat dragged in. Must be something important for both of you to be here. Sadly, though, I'm pretty banged up from the fight against the Brotherhood of Evil, so I'll have to help you in whatever way I can." Crypto walks up with the news clipping, and as Chimp begins to read it, he says that he was reading about this. He was gonna take a look at the case once he healed up, but there isn't much that he can do right now. Chimp thinks back on it for a moment and then says, "Wait, you're not thinking about getting the band back together, are you? Getting the Super Pets back together for one more mission? If I can remember, it was just like the other day. Flexi, the Plastic Bird, Bat Hound, Clay Critter, Crypto, Bat Cow, and Streaky. You were a fine force of fur, but truth be told, it's doubtful that Streaky would even talk to Crypto, not after what happened." Crypto whimpers and then barks, and Chimp yells, Okay. Flexi and Streaky meet up every Wednesday for drinks at the park. If they ask, you didn't hear it from me. A little while later, over at the park, Crypto and Titus begin searching for Streaky when Crypto thinks back to what happened on that frightful night. The one that separated the Super Pets! The Super Pets were all in the same park when Dexstar and his animals attacked. It was Clay Critter who got killed, and it was all his fault. Crypto failed the team. Crypto quietly barks and Streaky appears behind him and begins to hiss. Titus runs over to stop her, but before he can even do anything, she bolts at Crypto, knocking him into the swing set. The two growl at each other for a bit, and then Titus breaks them up and explains the situation to her. But while she thinks about it and cleans herself, there's a flapping in the air and Flexi flies down. He first lands on Crypto, but after Crypto shakes him off, Streaky explains everything to him. Flexi points knowing where to go, but before leaving, Crypto and Streaky go back to growling at each other. Streaky snubs Crypto soon, and Crypto flies into the air, grabbing onto Titus's leash, leaving Streaky behind. Streaky looks up, saddened, knowing that she isn't helping her one true love. As the three of them fly over Gotham, Flexi squawks and uses his head to point down at the glowing barn, signaling that they are here. The glowing light is coming from an alien spaceship, and inside of it are all of the missing animals. Crypto uses his heat vision to get inside of the ship, and once all of the dogs see Flexi, they start barking and chasing after him. They go back and forth until Flexi finally changes into a bear and begins to chase after the dogs. But before long, the hooded man from before, who is actually an alien, tells the new group of dogs that they are better off without him. The humans make them pets. Now it is time for them to be free! Just as the alien pulls up, Crypto jumps down on the van, crushing it, and the alien quickly hits a button inside. Suddenly, a small pod shoots out of the van and then is stopped as it crashes into Bat Cow. Titus runs over to open up the cage with the animals. And the alien shouts, asking, "Don't you understand what I'm doing? I'm saving you! I'm setting you free! I am the Strange!" But before he could finish, Titus jumps in, pinning the alien to the ground. The alien reaches into his coat, stating that they all need to calm down, take a little nap. However, just then the alien can see something coming, and Streaky slams the cage that he was using to take the animals, slamming it down on him over and over. Crypto wields the cage shut, and the alien shouts they just ruined everything. They don't deserve to be saved. The next morning, the doorbell to Wayne Manor is rung, and Damien opens the door. Jonathan tells him that he flew over as fast as he could when he got the call, which he didn't have to do since this weird pigeon that you sent was begging me to come over. Flexi flies over Jonathan's head as Damien drags him in, stating that the pigeon's things aren't from him, but it doesn't matter. What matters is you gotta learn to type your dog. Jonathan asks, what is that supposed to mean? Crypto should be home. Maybe mom and dad gave him his freedom. Damien opens the door to the back, stating, I really hope that your day is free, because you got some work to do. Jonathan begins telling him that he can't. He's got to find out where all the animals have been taken to. And as Jonathan looks out, he sees Crypto and Titus sitting in the middle of all of the missing dogs. And Damien says, yeah, mission accomplished apparently. So now, you got to get them all home. Jonathan says, wait, we're supposed to be a team. But as the two of them argue over who's going to bring the dogs home, Crypto and Titus look at each other, and they bump paws. It was a quiet night at Wayne Manor as Bruce Wayne sits in his study reading a book. Not long ago, the Bat family had to fight off a future version of Tim Drake, one who had taken the Batman mantle and claimed the destruction of the world by a select few had come to pass. He had traveled back in time to prevent it from happening, and together the Bat family managed to hold the future Tim back until Hyper Time ultimately pulled him back to his own timeline. However, as Bruce reads his book, he begins to sense something, and he looks out his window to see a large bat-shaped figure coming his way. Before he even has a chance to react, future Tim breaks through the window, telling Bruce, hello. Tim kicks Bruce back, and he asks, didn't expect me back so soon, did ya? That hyper time just swallowed me up. Tim then kicks Bruce in the face and picks him up, throwing him into a wall. Bruce groans in pain as he gets up, wiping the blood from his nose, and he says, I'm gonna take a guess that there's another mission about the timeline needing to be saved. And the only way for your plan to succeed is for someone to die. You should know that I can't let that happen. Seconds later, Tim is thrown through the wall into the bathroom where Tim grabs a sink, bashing it over Bruce's head. The two go back and forth, hitting and kicking each other, grabbing onto anything that isn't bolted to the ground, giving them an upper hand. As the fight continues to make its way to the kitchen, Bruce flips Tim over the counter, and Tim rolls off, telling him, I'm not going anywhere until I get what I came for. Bruce tells him that he's gonna have to get through him if that's the case, and Tim says, I know, and he throws a knife into Bruce's leg. Tim charges and tackling him to the ground, and the two go back and forth, grabbing onto whatever they can get their hands on, hitting each other over and over again. As Tim falls down the stairs, Bruce takes out a knife, throwing it, cutting the wire to the chandelier. The weight of the chandelier causes it to fall fast down onto Tim, and as Tim pulls his arm back out, he's holding a gun. Bruce looks at the gun and says, even if you're from another timeline, shame on you for. But before Bruce could finish, there's a loud blam, and Bruce falls to the ground. Once Tim pulls himself out from under the chandelier, he takes Bruce's body and he drags it to the Batcave, telling him, you have to learn a great deal skipping through time. Tim opens up a chest filled with several boxes, each with the symbols of the Justice League members. Tim says, one thing that I learned is that Batman's paranoia will be his biggest advantage. Next stop,
Arctic. A short while later, Clark looks over his Fortress of Solitude, picking up pieces of the statues that Mr. Oz had recently destroyed. He tells Kellex that thankfully the pieces are large enough that they can be put back together, and Kellex tells him that he'll assist him in doing so. As Superman gets to work fusing the statues back together, Kellex gets a reading that they have an intruder. A Homo sapien has breached their fortress. As Kellex goes to handle the intruder, Tim begins shooting at him. However, before Tim could do any damage, there's a red blur, and Superman grabs Tim, throwing him into the wall. Superman spits out a bullet that Tim fired, and Tim tells him, "Ha, those bullets were specifically made to put at least a little pause in your step." And Superman says that guns are a dead giveaway, that you're not my Batman. That and your suit specs are different. Tim gets back up, telling him that there have been some modifications. Physiology dampener and vocal disruptor. But before he could finish, Superman smacks the vocal disruptor off, telling him, "You're Tim Drake, but older." Another timeline? Tim tells him, "I could tell you where I'm from and when, but then I would have to kill you. All I came here to do is to make sure that you won't prevent me from completing my appointed mission." Superman asks, "Who appointed you?" And Tim fires 2 missiles, stating, "That's none of your business!" Superman easily blasts the missiles with his heat vision, and as the smoke clears, he sees Tim operating one of the Kryptonian battle armor suits. Superman asks, "How could you control it?" And Tim punches Superman, telling him, "Superman from my world taught me how to read and speak Kryptonian." Tim then starts to step down onto Superman, and he grabs him, throwing him outside, stating, "Connor worshipped the ground that you walked on. If only he could see you now." Tim begins to climb out of the hole that he threw Superman out of, and Superman's eyes begin to glow red, and he flies over, ripping apart the battlesuit, throwing Tim to the ground. Superman begins to walk over, asking, "What are you here for now? I read Batman's reports on your last little visit." Tim pushes a button on his glove, telling him, "Something much bigger than you." Before Superman realizes it, though, a red cage starts to wrap itself around him and contain him. Superman tries to beat against the glass, but Tim tells him, "It's no use. That cage is lined with red kryptonite." Superman yells, "This isn't over! Batman will," and Tim stops him, telling him, "No, he won't, and neither will Superman. I'm sorry to say this, because there's no more time. To save our world, I have to kill Superboy." Later that night in Metropolis, Tim looks over his point of entry in the apartment building of Jonathan Kent. He fires an anchor into the wall, but before he can launch a hook into it, his arm begins to become distorted. He shouts as he tries to regain control of his body, stating that Hyper Time is trying to pull him back again, but he can't leave yet. He's got to keep it together. He focuses, flexing his arm until the distortion goes away, and quickly fires the hook into the connecting anchor. Once he crosses the gap, he opens the window to Jonathan's room, jumping and firing 2 trank darts into the bed. Tim then grabs the blanket so that he can secure Jonathan, but as he pulls back, he sees that Jonathan is already gone. Lois hears the noise, opening the door, asking if everything's alright, but that's when she sees Batman standing there. Tim shoots another trank dart into her neck, telling her, "Shush." Meanwhile, over in New York City, Damian and his Team Titans battle against the villains known as the Hangmen. Damian calls out that they don't have to hold back on these assassins, and just as he says that, each Titan begins to get taken down. Just before the villains can finish the Teen Titans off, there's a red-blue blur that shoots by, bouncing into each of the 5 Hangmen. Only a minute later, Gar tells Wally that was a good job he did taking out Breathtaker. Gar says that he wasn't the one on Provoke, he was busy with Shocky. Little Jiu-Jitsu mixed in with his secret tactics. Starfire says, "Wait, if Kid Flash and Beast Boy didn't stop them, then who did?" Damian pulls out a small flare and he fires it into the air, telling Starfire to do him a favor. The flare goes off in the sky and someone begins to cough, and Damian finishes, stating, "Catch Superboy." A second later, Jonathan comes crashing down onto Starfire, and as she catches him, she tells him not to worry, she has him. Later at Titan's Tower in San Francisco, Damian tells Jonathan that they've been over this before. He's not a Teen Titan! That is, unless a majority vote is passed. Jonathan says that after the Cracklow stuff, he promised he'd take him on a mission once a month. That was 3 months ago, Damian! Starfire asks him if that's true, and Damian says that, "I never officially said that. I only said that I would keep you focused." And Jonathan yells, "So you lied! You never had any intention of bringing me!" But just then a voice comes in over the intercoms telling them that he has full control over Titan Tower. There's no escape from this room. Gar looks back and sees Tim on the screen asking, "Is that Batman?" And Damian tells him, "It is most definitely not. That's Tim Drake, only older, from a different timeline." Raven asks, "Why didn't you mention this as the leader of the Teen Titans?" And Damian tells her, "Because it was a Bat family problem. Tim gained control of the system since they were his original design. That being said, he's here for one thing, and that's to prevent a future that he knows is gonna come." Tim tells Raven, "Go ahead, project my memory so that they can all see that I'm telling the truth. That way they know it to be genuine." Images begin to appear, and what they see is an older version of Tim, Damian, and Jonathan. Lines were crossed, actions were taken. Jonathan flew into the sky, unleashing an uncontrollable blast. There was destruction, suffering, and millions dead. Jackson Hyde asks, What did we just see? And Raven explains that it was a vision of Metropolis destroyed, millions died, all because of Superboy. From another room in the tower, Tim shouts, "This is the definitive future! And that's the one I'm here to fight and stop." Suddenly, a black liquid shoots out, hitting John, and as Wally runs to the door, he's electrocuted, knocked away. Starfire quickly begins to blast the liquid off, but the more that John fights against it, the more it begins to cover him. As panic begins to set in, John shouts, asking for someone to help him, and his eyes begin to flare. And Tim says, "No, it's too soon!" And John shoots an uncontrollable heat blast from his eyes. Damien shouts, "We have to get out of here! Fly with everything you've got or it's gonna kill us!" Jonathan rockets through the building, telling Damien, "Tell my mom and dad I'm sorry!" And John climbs higher into the sky, with his powers beginning to erupt, releasing a powerful explosion. Raven quickly creates a barrier, telling Wally to strengthen it with the Speed Force, but as the energy begins to come back, it blows up the entire tower roof. Meanwhile, in a different time and place, 3 people watch on a monitor, and as it pings, the woman says, "Tim's cloaking device has been disrupted by something massive." And one of the men asks, "Cassie, is he dead?" And she responds, stating, "She can't get a read on his vitals." And the man then says, "What should we do, Connor?" And Connor says, "What Titans do, Bart. We find him and we bring him home together." As Titan Tower begins to burn to the ground, the blast knocked all of the Titans out except for Damien and Tim. Tim gets up looking around, telling him, "My cloaking device has been damaged in the blast, but this is the prototype Titan uniforms. Maybe I can use them to forge a new identity and become untraceable again." Damien, though, begins to back up, checking the computer to see the vital signs of the other members. The computer tells him that there are life signs for all of the Teen Titan members. Though unconscious, they are strong and accounted for. Damien then asks to give him the location of Superboy now, and moments later, Damien takes his submarine and goes into the water to pull Jonathan out. All the while, Tim is working on his new costume, stitching together many of the prototype suits. He says, "From the rising sun came a bat out of hell, but I am now savior." Back with Damien, he begins to head out, and he asks Jonathan if he's alright. Jonathan sulks, telling him, "No! What if I had hurt someone?" And Damien says, "Just relax, I checked the vitals, everyone's fine. Unconscious, but you didn't kill anyone. What happened to you wasn't your fault, you were pushed to the edge. But the Titans aren't the problem right now, it's Tim Drake. He had every intention of killing Batwoman if he hadn't been pulled out of our timeline. He'll do the same thing to you." Damien then starts working on the computer, and Jonathan asks, "Who are you trying to reach with the comm link?" And Damien tells him, "Our fathers. Even though I said I would never call them, they should know that Drake is back. But I can't reach them either." Jonathan begins to look around himself, asking, "What was that anyway? That power, where did it come from?" And Damien says, "I'll look into Batman's files. I know that Superman has a solar flare. A solar flare is something that Superman can control and use for good, but you, given the mixed DNA, you might not be able to control it like your father." Jonathan then says that he won't be responsible for killing innocent people in this time or any other. And Damien tells him, "I won't let that happen. I'm gonna keep you safe, John." John tells him, "Thanks." And Damien asks, "Friends are supposed to help each other, right?" And Jonathan says, "I thought we were just partners." And Damien tells him, "Shut up." Later at Titan's Tower, Wally runs through the entire building looking for Damien and John, but he only finds a note stating, "Give me time," signed R. Raven tells him that she could have told him they weren't there. That and Tim Drake is also standing directly behind them. As everyone looks back, they see Tim as savior, with his guns pointed right at them, telling him, "I'm willing to talk." Raven tells him if he says so, he could holster his weapons. Even though they're from different timelines, they still share an emotional connection. Tim tells everyone, "We don't have much time. There isn't much left of my suit after Superboy went all Kira on us. So from here on out, call me Savior. But as you can see, I'm not the bad guy here. The scariest thing that you all witnessed was just a small representation of what Jonathan Kent is capable of when pushed." And Jackson tells him, "Yeah, from the looks of it, it was you doing the pushing." Tim says, "That's right, and he barely knows me. Imagine what would happen if someone close pushed him. I've seen it. Thanks to Raven, so have you. Even Robin did, and he chooses to keep Superboy away from us." And Starfire corrects him, stating, "No, from you." Tim tells her, "No, I mean them. If we don't do something, there's going to be a future generation unborn due to what Superboy does." Wally then asks, what does he mean by do something? And Tim calmly tells everyone, "We have to terminate him." Starfire tells him to say the word. She wants him to say it out loud so that everyone knows what he's implying. And Tim says, "We have to kill Superboy. And if Damien gets in the way, we have to kill him too." Jonathan asks, "What if we get in your way?" And Tim tells him, "I'll do what I must." And Starfire then says, "We will too." Gar separates the two of them, stating, "Let's dial it down the drama here for a second. First, no one's gonna kill anyone. However, I am inclined to believe Tim's motivation given Superboy's little fireworks show." Raven then says that they'll depower him so that they can contain and help him. Those are the options for someone who hasn't unleashed his powers to commit a crime. If Tim can agree to these terms, they'll help him. After a few moments of silence, Tim says, I agree. But if we're gonna do something, we have to leave now. And Starfire tells him, Robin said to give him time, so we're gonna give him time. However, at that exact moment, the hyper time begins to pull away at Tim's arm, and as his hand disappears, it starts to appear somewhere else. Over in Titans of Tomorrow headquarters, a blue light shines over the room, and Cassie shouts that the time phase is activating. Just then, Tim's hand begins to appear, and Bart quickly grabs a hold of it, trying to pull Tim back. However, as Bart pulls, he tells everyone that it's pulling them in, and in the current time, Tim shouts in pain, telling everyone that the people from his time are coming for him. Starfire wants to give Damian time, but we don't have it. We have to do something now, Raven. Gar yells that they need to help Tim. They have seen his cards. Once they get Superboy, they'll sort this all out. Starfire sees Raven focusing her power and fires a blast, telling her not to do it, but as Raven opens up her eyes, she says she has to. In a flash of light, Raven disappears with both Gar and Tim, and Wally says that they did it. They're gone. And Jackson tells them not to worry. Superboy gives off a distinct energy signature, and they're surrounded by water. And when he looks into the water, he can find exactly where Damian and Jonathan are. After searching in the water, Jackson follows the trail left by Jonathan's energy and finds an underwater structure. Jackson radios back that he's at the location where Damian took Jonathan, so when they're ready, hit it. Up above, Starfire and Wally hover in the Titans jet, telling them that they're coming in hard and fast. Meanwhile, over in Damian's makeshift hideout, the computer warns that there's an incoming attack. He yells to the computer to arm itself with non-lethal weapons. Take out whoever's out there! And seconds later, Starfire aims the jet down, flying it into the water, crashing into Damian's hideout. Once the jet is lodged in without leaking water, Starfire and Wally jump out and they begin to make their way through the facility. Just as the Titans start to move in, both Jonathan and Damian spring out of the vents, ready to attack, with Starfire telling Damian to wait, but Damian fires his grappling hook and wraps it around Jackson Hyde. Jonathan then shoots by, grabbing Wally's legs out from underneath him and says, "I'm really sorry I have to do this," and then Starfire fires a blast into Jonathan, allowing Wally to free himself to take on Damian. Damian shouts to Jonathan not to hold back his punches. "We need to stop them from taking you!" And then Wally runs circles around Damian, and just as he stops, he grabs Damian from behind, telling him that he made a mistake letting him get close. And Damian says, "No, you did exactly what I wanted you to do. This gas is something special that I've been working on in case we have to fight evil speedsters. I call it slow-mo." Jackson continues to struggle with the grappling hook, but as he flexes his muscles, he breaks free, shouting, "I've had enough of this." He creates two water spouts that shoot out of the ground, crashing into Damian and Jonathan, ultimately stopping them from attacking. As the two boys sit down, Starfire asks, "Now can we please talk?" And Damian tells her, "We're not handing Jonathan over." Wally tells him, "Yeah, neither are we." And Jackson then adds that Raven and Beast Boy chose a side, just didn't happen to be theirs. After a few minutes of explaining their plan, Damian shouts, asking, "Is it the best you could think of? Knocking them out?" And Starfire tells him yes. It's the only way that Raven could not track you guys. Wouldn't you agree, Superboy? Damian continues to yell, but Superboy punches and knocks him out. And says, "Actually, I don't agree, but before you knock me out, here's the coordinates of the fortress. It's the safest place that I can think of." Jonathan then holds up his fist and says, "I'm not exactly excited about this. Just make sure to add some speed to this, Kid Flash." Wally grabs Jonathan's fist and tells him, "Sure, no problem." And then crack! A short while later at the Fortress of Solitude, Jackson and Wally move Damian and Jonathan inside, and after grabbing a piece of ice, Jackson changes it to water to wake them up. Damian wakes up shouting, "What the heck? No smelling salts handy?" And as the two of them get up, everyone looks around at the destruction. The Starfire says that she hates to say it, but it doesn't appear that this is the bastion of safety that he had hoped for. Damian says that he knew they shouldn't have come here, but while Jonathan flies around, he notices something outside. He rushes out there to find his father, Superman, still trapped in the cage that Tim had set up for him. He touches it, asking what happened, and Superman tells him to get back. His powers will be weakened if he gets any closer. Jonathan hits it with his heat vision, trying to free his father, but as everyone gets closer, Superman tells them to get Jonathan away. He then tells Jackson to push this chamber under the ice. It's the only way. As everyone begins to pull Jonathan away from his father, he screams, "Let me go! Once I'm a safe distance away!" And once he's a safe distance away, Superman tells Jackson to do it. Jackson places both of his hands on the ground and the ice begins to splinter. Superman tells him, "You have to be brave." As Jonathan watches the cave fall beneath the surface, he screams, releasing a wave of energy. Below the surface, the pressure pushed against the cage is enough to break it, allowing Superman to free himself. He flies back out from under the ground and he yells to Jonathan, but through Jonathan's anger, he can't hear him. He thinks his father is gone. He thinks that Tim did this, and he thinks he's about to kill millions. Superman tells everyone that Jonathan is in some sort of trance. He's creating some kind of emotional superstorm. Just then, Raven appears with Gar and Tim once she's got a lock on Jonathan's emotional level. But before they can even fully appear, Superman charges at Tim, asking him, "What have you done?" Superman squeezes on his head and Tim tells him, "Same solar flare power that you do, but because he's half human, he can't control it. You have to let this happen. If Superboy dies here today, millions can be saved." But just then there's another flash of light, and inside it is Connor, Cassie, and Bart, the Titans of tomorrow. Wally asks who's that, and Cassie tells them that they're here to bring back their teammate. While Bart tries to control Tim's hand, he says that this thing's got a mind of its own, and it led us to some kids that are about to go boom. As Jonathan's solar flare starts to gain power, Cassie uses her lasso to try to keep it from expanding, and tells everyone that they shouldn't be standing around. Titans together! Gar turns into a giant octopus, and he positions himself on the top of the orb, while Cassie tells Raven to try and contain the blast. Superman calls out to the Flashes to start running counterclockwise so that they can try and reverse the polarity. But while everyone works together to try and stop Jonathan from going out of control, Superman looks at Tim, telling him, "I don't have time to deal with you. I'm going inside of the flare and I'm gonna get him out." But before he goes, Connor stops him, telling him, "Wait, who's inside of there?" And Superman tells him, "My 10-year-old son Jonathan, I have to save him." Both Superman and Connor look at the ever-expanding orb, and Connor says that they are going to save him. He failed them once, he's not going to let this happen again. They both race to the center of the flare, and Tim feels himself being pulled back again by hyper time, and he says that they are willing to sacrifice themselves to save him. Damian then jumps on the back of Tim's head, shouting, "This is all your fault! You screwed up the timeline, and they're all gonna be killed because of you!" Tim throws Damian off, telling him that he knows what to do now. He'll save them all and take the power with them. Just then, as Tim's body is sucked into hypertime, he begins to absorb the blast, telling everyone to stop. He'll handle this. As the portal to hypertime opens, Tim is pulled inside along with the solar flare, and as the blast begins to fade, Superman picks Jonathan up, and Jonathan asks what happened. Superman tells him that he has made things right by giving all he had to save him. As the portal begins to close, everyone sees Tim inside and many events happening throughout time, but then in one last flash, that portal disappears. Everyone begins to get back up, and Gar asks what did they just see, and Raven tells them that they saw a version of Tim sacrificing himself for them. Wally then asks all of those images, were they the past, present, or future? As Superman says that that's another question that needs answers. In all of this action, we've never been properly introduced. Who are you all, and why are you wearing my S? Connor tells him that he doesn't know him yet, but once he told him that when it comes to time travel and alternate realities, the less they say and do, the better. Superman tells him, that sounds like good advice. We're very sorry for the loss of. But Cassie stops him, telling him, Tim Drake isn't dead. He's now everywhere and everywhen. Damian then says that he has so many questions. This way they can learn about. But Cassie stops him, telling him, that's exactly why we can't stay. Whatever is coming your way, you need to figure it out on your own. Jackson then asks, how are they going to get back? And Bart says that the residual reverse. Wally says that they can use the same speed force that they came in on, like a time tether and slingshot back, right? And Bart laughs, telling him, haha, not bad. Both Superman and Connor shake hands, and Bart starts to race around until he creates a portal for them to return home in. Once the three disappear, Gar says that he thinks he knows the blonde. Wish they had gotten names. And Wally smiles, telling him, I got something better than names, and he pulls out his phone, showing that he got a selfie. Pretty cool, right? Right before they phased out, little souvenir. Raven grabs the phone, blowing it up, asking, do you want to compromise the timeline and more lives? And Wally laughs, stating, you know, I can just re-download that from the cloud. And Raven snaps, this is not a time to be joking. A version of Tim Drake, someone that all of us are close to, just sacrificed himself in front of all of us less than a minute ago. And you want to smile and take selfies? Wally sighs, telling her, I'm sorry. I really wasn't thinking. I just got caught up seeing another flash. Superman then directs Jonathan and Damian away, stating that it seems that they've got some things to clear up. Excuse us. And a short while later, back at Wayne Manor, Bruce begins to open up his eyes and he sees Alfred waiting with breakfast. He asks, how long have I been unconscious? Alfred pours him a glass of orange juice, telling him that he must have had a dream. Bruce says, dream, huh? Back at the Fortress of Solitude, Jonathan and Damian look at Clark, who's standing there for 5 minutes without saying a word. Damian whispers, oh, what is he thinking about? This is all done. Can we go home now? As Superman tells him that he's not so sure that he agrees with everything being wrapped up. Jonathan points to his ears, stating, super hearing, remember? And Damian scoffs, stupid powers. Clark then says that he may have to reassess this partnership of theirs. Damian seems to be a catalyst for some far-flung future maelstrom that ends up engulfing my son. So Damian should understand my concern about you guys going out and doing your crime fighting. Damian says that they're talking about a possible future, not one set in stone. As Superman tells him yes, but if he can do something to make sure that it doesn't happen as a father, he will stop. But Damian stops him and says, look, Jonathan's possible future is already altered the minute that Tim absorbed the solar flare. So I can swear that I will never put Jonathan in harm's way. And Jonathan says, that's right. Just like I'm gonna protect Damian and whatever the world has in store for his possible future. So there's nothing to worry about, Pop. Staying close to Damian, being a friend in good times and bad is the answer. Not pushing him away. We're only gonna learn by making our own choices. Superman smiles, asking, when did you get so smart? And Jonathan tells him, maybe it's because I listen to what you and Mom have to say all the time. As Damian and Jonathan head back outside, he asks Starfire what's going on, and she says they need need to have a meeting and talk about what just happened. Xavier fractured them easily. It's important to speak about their feelings. And Gar says that it'll be hard since the tower's kind of blown up. And Jonathan tells him that he's really sorry about that. Superman says, don't worry, you can have a temporary headquarters until you get things back up. Initiate Justice League headquarters transport code for 8 on my mark. Seconds later, everyone is teleported away and Superman welcomes everyone to the Justice League headquarters. Their meeting table is theirs to use, and he'll be in the monitor room if they need him. All of the Titans walk over to the meeting table, and as Jonathan walks away, Damian slams his fist down, stating, "Meeting's called to order. I move that we put Superboy up for vote to be a half member of the Teen Titans, later to be recognized as a full member when he turns 13 years of age." Before everyone can vote, though, Jonathan runs back, stating, "I'm sorry, I overheard, but is there anything I can do to convince you?" And Damian gives him a thumbs up and says, "That won't be necessary." Jonathan smiles, stating, "Okay, I'll let you get on with it then." Just then, Bruce walks up telling Damian that he would like a full report on everything that just happened. "And what are you voting on?" Damian says, "Whether or not Superboy can join the Teen Titans." Bruce tells him, "Everyone go ahead and give me a show of hands." Damian puts his hand up, but no one else does. And Bruce says, "The nays have it. Sorry, Superboy." Starfire tells Jonathan that it's not about him. It's about how much they have to figure out about themselves. And Jackson adds that they really need to work on them as a team more than anything else, with Jonathan sighing, stating, "Right, I'll see you later then." As Jonathan walks away, Damian runs over, stating that he's sorry about that, and Jonathan tells him, "It's okay. Thanks for having my back, though." And Damian says, "Hey, what are partners for?" And Jonathan asks, "Friends, right?" And Damian asks, "Friends? You just had to ruin it, didn't you?" And Jonathan says, "Sorry." But Damian pats Jonathan on the shoulder, telling him, "Don't be." At the West Reeves School, the young Jonathan Kent has a kickball thrown at his head as he makes his way to home plate. Jonathan continues to run and Georgia shouts that he's out. Why is he still running? And Jonathan calls back that headshots don't count. Those are the rules at his old school. And Georgia tells him that the new school, new rules, small town. But before the two of them could go on, a teacher comes out stating that they both have been warned about arguing at recess. Kickball is over anyway. It's time to clear the field and get back to class. Georgia sticks out her tongue, and as Jonathan gives her a fist bump, Jonathan asks, "Pick up the inning tomorrow?" Georgia tells him, "You know it." She'll give him his out this time, but is he coming to homeroom now? And Jonathan tells her, "Just a sec." He told his friend that he'd meet him by his bus. After getting changed, Jonathan heads out to the baseball field to see Alfred flying Damian by helicopter. Damian jumps out and he asks, "Do you always have to meet me here every morning?" And Jonathan tells him, "When your friend comes to school in a helicopter, yeah." The two begin to head to class, and Damian says, "Just so you know, our parents may be out of town, but we still have scheduled patrols." Jonathan tells him that he can't, he has homework to do, and Damian says, "I'll do it for you." Georgia overhears and asks if Short Rounds is doing his homework now. And if he is he taking on more clients? Damian asks Jonathan to tell his Amazon friend to leave him alone. And Georgia runs off laughing, stating that Amazons are awesome, so his insult is denied. Jonathan laughs, stating that she's cool and totally falling for his regular guy act. Meet up for lunch? Damian tells him, "How about no? Does no work?" And Jonathan says, "All right, see you at lunch, buddy." As the two head off to their classes, Talia al Ghul watches Damian and sighs, stating that all of that potential is just wasting away. What is she going to do about their son, Bruce? Later at the lunch period, Jonathan and the other kids head out to the soccer field to play, but as Jonathan falls down, Georgia asks what is he staring at. Jonathan looks over at the bleachers and sees Damian and then says that he'll have to catch up with them later. Jonathan runs over and asks Damian why isn't he, more friendlier with everyone. Most of the kids here are scared of him. And Damian tells him, "Good, I didn't ask to be sent here. I was doing fine at home, away from all of this normalness." And Jonathan yells that no one is normal. "You are better than anyone. Our dads go out every night and..." But before Jonathan could go on, Damian tells him to be quiet. They aren't alone. Jonathan follows Damian down to the locker rooms and says that maybe he just heard a squirrel or something. And Damian looks around, stating, "Like hell I did, I heard." But before he could finish, Damian is grabbed and Jonathan readies his heat vision, telling whoever it is to come out now. Damian tells him, "It's okay, it's my mother, and she's holding a sword to my throat." Jonathan looks at Talia and asks, "Your mother?" And Damian asks Talia, "I assume this has something to do with father?" Talia tells him no, it's something that she needs from him. His bright-eyed, bushy-tailed friend may have to die, unfortunately. Damian kicks upward, freeing himself from Talia, but as she falls, she kicks Damian in the back, launching him into Jonathan. Jonathan catches him, and as he sets him down, he says, "Your mom seems very nice." Talia tosses a small package at Damian, telling him that he needs to get dressed and come with her now. He takes the package, stating, "One word of this to father, and he could ruin your month." And Talia tells him, "You won't say a word to him. Not if you want your secrets to stay secret. All I'm here for is to remind you of how truly gifted you are." Damian opens up the package, and in it is his League of Assassins uniform. "You're still allied with the League?" She goes on stating that he is a weapon, one that she forged. This coming mission is delicate and requires the best, which happens to be him. Damien tells her that he has no intentions of ever turning his back on father. They've been down this road. Talia holds her sword to his chest, telling him, I know, dear son, but it is only a matter of time. You are the grandson of the immortal Raz Al Ghul. Death is in your blood. You can keep the sword. I've killed 3 men with it last night. Have a good day at school. Talia throws the weapon to the ground and walks away, with Damien picking it up, breaking the blade over his knee. And then him and Jonathan begin to leave. Later, over at Morrison Bay, Jonathan finishes changing, and Damien says that it looks like his mother is still using some of her Leviathan resources. He knows all of their vehicle GPS tracking codes, so following her won't be an issue. Jonathan says that he can't wrap his head around him being but Damien stops him, telling him, don't play dumb, you knew about my past. My mother is in our backyard, we need to go out and find out what she's up to. Later in Gotham City, a League assassin continues to keep watch on a building. Jonathan flies up asking if he's the one who ordered Uberfly. The assassin spins back, swinging at Jonathan's chest, and as the sword shatters on the hit, Jonathan says, that man is right, they always aim for the S. Damien then jumps down onto the assassin's sword, telling him, hello again, Ezer. I always said that you were too easily distracted. Damien hits Ezer, and then Jonathan catches him asking, wait, you trained these guys? The two begin to make their way into the building, taking on the rest of the assassins, but as they fight, the assassins soon stop fighting back. One of them falls to their knees, yelling, yield! This shadow falls to the ground in respect and honor to you, the demon's son! Jonathan asks, what the heck? Dude, who exactly are you to these guys? Then the assassin says that he is the pinnacle of the line of Al Ghul, the bringer of blood, the hunter of men, the demon's son is a child with the demon's touch. Damien kicks the assassin away, telling him, you must have me confused with someone else. Jonathan then says, okay, I'm confused. These guys are scared to death of you. Exactly how many people have you killed? Damien heads over to the laptop, telling him, first, let's clarify that these people are killers themselves, and second, that was a whole other lifetime ago. Jonathan yells, you're only 13! But rather than listening, Damien gets to work on the laptop. After a few moments, Damien tells him, oh no. My mother was sent here to find out about her targets. One of the people that she was hired to kill is your mother, Lois. A short while later, over at the Gotham Square Cafe, the man at the counter calls out, 2 Americanos for Louis. Lois takes the coffee, stating it's Lois. She swears it's a real name. And just as Lois hands the coffee over to her friend Chloe, her phone begins to ring. She looks at it and says that it's her son, give her a few moments. She answers asking if everything's okay, and Jonathan, who's flying to her location at that very moment, says, hey mom, I may have butt dialed you. I know I'm not supposed to call when you're on assignment, but while I have you, where do you keep the dish soap? Under the sink? That makes a lot of sense. Damien says that he has her exact location. She's at the Sun Dollar in Gotham Square. And Jonathan yells, all right, gotta go, be a good reporter, or like whatever. Lois turns to her phone and says that she's sorry about that. Her son gets a little nervous when he's left alone. Just outside of the cafe though, Talia positions herself on the building across the street with a rifle. As she begins to look down the sight, she asks where is her son. She made it obvious for him to track her. But if he doesn't show up, well, she'll just end this. As Talia focuses on Lois, she pulls the trigger and fires. The bullet rockets out of the barrel towards Lois, but just before it can hit the window, Jonathan flies by grabbing the bullet, stating, faster than a speeding bullet? Check. Talia looks down at the cafe asking, did someone deflect her shot? And then she radios to her team, telling them to find whoever did this and kill them. And tell her if anyone happens to see her son. As Talia looks down the sights again, Damien swings up, kicking her away from the rifle, telling her, hello, mother! She wipes the blood from her mouth, stating that, isn't he a good boy for saving the day? And Damien asks, a contract? What happened? The Leviathan Civil War left you working for scraps? Talia then asks, what does he think an assassin does? She wanted to see how much of a disappointment he'd really have become. And now she has her answer. An immense one. Down on the street, Jonathan blows his hand, stating, that didn't tickle though! He looks back and he sees a group of the League of Assassins, stating, oh hey, League of Assassins, right? Maybe you've heard of my friend. As the men jump onto Jonathan, a woman on the sidewalk shouts that there's a group of men beating up on a child. Someone needs to do something! And the woman crosses the street, but as she does, one of the assassins lunges at her. Jonathan quickly flies out from under the group of men and catches the blade, telling them, just a heads up, miss, this almost never happens in Metropolis. And he crushes the sword. Back on the building, Damien says that he has an incredibly bad mother, and Talia tells him that she taught him everything. All his father has done is taken their blood and thinned it out. Talia swings at Damien, but before the blade can cut, Damien takes his cape and wraps it around the blade, jumping over it and disarming her. Just as Damien starts to come down, Talia kicks him in the stomach, throwing him over the ledge. Down below, Jonathan finishes tying up the assassins, but as he does, someone shouts, Superboy? Jonathan looks back to see Lois and Chloe.
Chloe says that she never even knew Superman had a kid. Jonathan says, hello ladies. And Lois asks, what brings Superboy to Gotham? While Damian pulls himself back up onto the roof to fight Talia, Jonathan says he's, just visiting from Metropolis. And Lois tells him, same here. What a coincidence. And Jonathan tells her, yep, there was a problem and I decided to, help. I'm not really Superman though. I just found the shirt in the garbage. Lois says, and who is he supposed to be? And Jonathan says, a friend. And Lois smiles, stating, nice to know. Well, good luck in Gotham, friend. Don't stay out too late. I'm sure your mother is worried about you being out so late. Back up on the roof, though, Talia sits on the ground stating that she was worried that he had gotten too soft in his father's custody. But she can see that that is not the case. Damian holds out Talia's sword, telling her, and it will never be by the likes of you. Talia laughs, telling him, you are and always will be an assassin at heart, my lovely boy. Your mother's child, all alone battling through the darkness. Damian says, father is all the family I need, and I have friends now. Talia laughs, telling him, they aren't your friends. They're victims who simply don't know it yet. Damian yells as he thrusts the sword down at Talia, grazing her face and cutting off a lock of hair. She looks at her hair and says, that is such a Bruce move. And then she kicks Damian in the stomach, knocking him away. She stands back up, stating that this was a test to show her everything she needed to know about him. His journey back to her will be difficult, but she will. And as she looks up, Jonathan flies by, dropping the group of assassins at her feet. Damian then catches the sword, telling her that father and her have something in common. You both underestimate me. The police are on their way, and father will hear about this. Damian then breaks the sword, throwing it back, stating that if anything is to happen to that reporter. Talia catches the handle and blade, telling him that she came here looking for an answer. And she got it. A short while later, and a few blocks over, Damian swings down to his hover bike, and Jonathan asks, how about that aim, huh? Totally timed it perfectly. Damian pulls the tarp off of his bike, stating that his mother is safe, and thanks for not mentioning him to his mother about his secret identity. He's going to fly home from here, maybe keep an eye out on his mom for a while before he's grounded for a decade. Damian then flies off on the bike, stating, whatever. And Jonathan gets ready, saying, sheesh, what a grouch. Before he can leave, though, Damian flies back down, telling him, just so you know, the things that she chained me to do was when I was a toddler. And Jonathan says, all that blood, the people you've hurt, must be hard to live with. Damian tells him, I'm not proud of it, but I've learned that I can be better. And that whenever I am, my mother loses and my father wins. Jonathan smiles, patting him on the back, telling him, hey, remember, you're the one making the choice, not them. The only one winning is you. That's why we're pals, right? And as the two begin to walk off, Jonathan says, so, since you trained people, can you teach me how to use a sword? And Damian tells him, absolutely not. And Jonathan yells, come on! People would be like, look up at this guy! It's a bird! It's a plane! It's the Super Ninja Jedi Boy! And Damian says, fine, how about this? You teach me to fly, and then you can learn how to use a sword. And Jonathan shouts, that's not even fair! In the bright and sunny city of Metropolis, two researchers in the LexCorp offices go to check on their human AI synthetic being, Kid Amazo. The female researcher says that she just needed to make sure that everything was okay until Mr. Luthor returns so that he can isolate the genetic level mutation of the Amazo virus. There's nothing that they have to do, but as the researchers open the door to Kid Amazo's room, they find that he and his suit are gone. Later, over at the Super Sons headquarters under Morrison Bay, Jonathan eats his noodles, stating that he's never gonna get married, and if he has to, it's going to be to these noodles. As Jonathan uses the transport pod to get it, Damian radios back, how did you get through? I've had you on mute this whole time. And Jonathan says, yeah, about that. Batman told me how to override the comms. Said something about muting people a lot. Damian continues his work, stating that the two of them are worse than the Injustice League. Soon after, Jonathan comes in asking, I thought you said we're supposed to meet up after school. And Damian tells him, took too long talking to teachers. As Damian pushes up his weights, he begins to struggle, and when he looks over, he sees Jonathan pushing them down on one side. Jonathan asks, are you okay? And Damian yells, very funny, move your noodle fingers away. As Jonathan lets go, he walks over to the window to look out at the fish, and then he notices something else in the water. Seconds later, Kid Amazo bursts through the walls, and Damian yells, Kid Amazo! And Kid Amazo tells him, in the flesh, mostly. Water begins to pour into the base, throwing the two boys into the wall. And Jonathan asks, how did you escape Luthor's lab? Did Luthor send you? Damian tells him, we can ask questions later. We gotta get the pressurized rebreathers that Batman gave us before this place completely fills up. Jonathan jumps into the water, shouting to go get the masks. He'll handle Kid Amazo. Damian then uses his grappling hook to get out of the water, and he tells Jonathan, don't be stupid. That armor gives him as much power as the Justice League. You can't hold him off forever. Jonathan hits Kid Amazo with his heat vision blast, telling him, we can argue later, get to safety. Damian scoffs as he takes a deep breath and he dives underwater, swimming towards the rebreathers.
Kid Amazo punches Jonathan underwater, telling him that it's been so long since they last talked. How come you don't come and visit? Jonathan tries to take another swing, but Kid Amazo darts out of the way, yelling, "You're out of your element! You're already running out of air!" And Jonathan swings yet again as Kid Amazo catches it. He tells Jonathan, "I have the power of an Atlantean! There's nothing that you can!" But just then, Kid Amazo is hit with an escape pod, freeing Jonathan. Damien swims over with the rebreather, and as Jonathan begins to pass out, Damien puts the mask on Jonathan, telling him, "Take deep breaths. Take deep breaths." Damien then begins to swim towards the surface, telling himself that he could feel the water pressure building, and he's carrying 100 pounds of dead weight. Not to mention that there's also a superpowered maniac on my tail. These are some good odds. As he continues to swim, Jonathan starts to wake back up, and he takes over, stating that he can fly them up faster. Hang on. Jonathan then begins to rocket towards the surface, and just before he gets out, a black tendril reaches out, grabbing him, pulling him under. Damien tries to call out to Jonathan to go after him, but as he gives chase, he realizes that he's lost his rebreather. He turns back to get air, and just as he's about to pass out, a metallic arm reaches out, grabbing him. Cyborg pulls Damien out of the water, and he asks, "What the hell is going on down there?" Damien coughs, asking, "How did you?" And Cyborg tells him, Superman and Batman installed monitors a few weeks back connected to the League satellite. Batman made it very clear that if there was ever an emergency, I was to bring you two home. Normally, they would be here, but the rest of the team is rescuing some oil riggers. Damien shouts, "I don't care about the rules. We gotta go back down there and help Superboy." Cyborg tells him, "Superboy's down there?" That's all he had to say. Now fill me in on this Kid Amazo. Later at the first General Oil platform, Kid Amazo jumps out with Jonathan, throwing him to the ground, asking, "Are you still alive?" Jonathan doesn't answer, and Kid Amazo kicks him in the stomach, forcing him to spit all of the water that he took in out. He begins to cough, stating, "Reggie!" And Kid Amazo knocks him back, telling him, "Not anymore!" Jonathan gets back up, asking, "What are you talking about? I thought LexCorp was helping you." Kid Amazo begins to laugh, telling him, "Reggie is anything but free. All I had to do was wait for a chance to get out of there is all. Lex was taking me apart trying to find the Amazo virus. Lex believed that the source of my power was coming from Reggie. That may have been true at one point, but all I needed from the boy was energy. Reggie was weak, the shell of a boy who believed the power made him a man. To be honest, he'd gotten as far as he could have before I got rid of him." Jonathan tells him, "Wait, you killed Reggie? You murderer!" Kid Amazo grabs Jonathan by the face, telling him, "All that's left is Amazo. But now I have Superboy, and from my experience, I know that you can take much more abuse than Reggie. That's why I spent so many weeks tapping into the city security systems, tracking you all down. I am the ultimate in wearable technology, but I require a host. External power requires internal power as a filter. I got plans for my new source of organic power." Amazo holds Jonathan's head up, showing him the Justice League in chains. And he says, "Yeah, I'll be siphoning power from the Justice League. Perhaps you heard of them." Amazo lets go, and Jonathan asks, "How did you?" And Amazo tells him it was easy to lure them under the pretense that human life was in danger, which, in a way, is true. He reaches out to Jonathan, telling him, "That would be you, half-breed. You're gonna join Amazo." Jonathan gets back up and shoots past him, shouting, "Like heck I will!" But above them, Cyborg lowers his aircraft, and Damien says, "Here we are. Now get me close so I can jump down." Cyborg tells him that if this thing has the League, then we're taking it up before we can send a warning. That means Flash level fast. So right now, we are a team. Damien jumps out of the aircraft, telling him, "I already have a team, and my teammate needs my help." Down below, Jonathan begins to pull at the chains, trying to free Superman, but as he struggles, the chains remain intact. Amazo grabs a hold of him, stating that he'll give Amazo form. "You cannot kill Amazo. It is forever. Only humans have endings. The power that the League will generate is infinite." Cyborg charges him from behind, punching Amazo, stating, "Yeah, infinite pain in the butt." Damien jumps up, attempting to free Jonathan, but Jonathan tells him to forget about him. Amazo's using the Justice League as batteries. While Damien gets back to work on Amazo's terminal, Jonathan breaks free from the restraints, holding him down, and he yells, "Amazo's starting to charge up!" Amazo turns his attention to Damien, and as he fires a blast, Jonathan jumps in the way, taking the hit. As Jonathan is thrown into the wall, Damien continues his work, asking if everything's okay, and Jonathan tells him, "You could have moved for once." Damien tells him, "I can't be bothered at the moment. Now go check on Cyborg and make sure he's okay." Jonathan says, "Shouldn't we go help him?" And Damien tells him, "I got a different idea. We need two things to win. The first thing is we need Cyborg to give up." The Cyborg asks him, "What? Are you nuts? Didn't Batman train you?" Damien yells, "That's what I let him think. Just do what I say for now." Jonathan starts to break the chains holding Batman and then calls out that he's almost got it. Damien fires his grappling hook, binding Cyborg, and Cyborg breaks free, shouting, "You're as crazy as your old man." Amazo then grabs onto Cyborg, and Damien shouts, "I promise I know what I'm doing." As Amazo latches onto Cyborg, Cyborg tells him, "I really hope you do, because this is either going to save the day or be the end of every day from here on out." Amazo begins to assimilate Cyborg, and then Damien looks at Jonathan, asking if he's done yet, and Jonathan breaks the chain holding Batman's arm, telling him, "He's free." Damien tells him, good. We have about 15 seconds before the Amazo armor fully engages Cyborg's internals. Damien looks at Batman's glove, telling him, I was right. My father always keeps information downloaded to every segment of his uniform. Genius. But don't tell him I said that. Jonathan pulls off Superman's cape, telling him, hey, your secrets are safe with me, but I really need to do something about Cyborg. Cyborg begins to run towards the two of them, but as he passes, Jonathan jumps onto him with Superman's cape and wraps it around his head. Cyborg then starts to break through the cape, and Jonathan tells him, it's been long enough. We need to do whatever it is now. Damien pulls Batman's glove, firing a wire stating that it's near the cerebral cortex, and Jonathan shouts, use human words! And Damien yells back, brain, get it as close to the brain as possible! And Jonathan sighs, telling him, I'm sorry to do this, and he jams the wires into the sides of Cyborg's head. Cyborg begins to twitch, stating, organic integrity subverted, Amazo offline. Jonathan is then thrown off, and he asks if that's good or bad, and Damien smiles, telling him, wait for it. Just then, Cyborg lets out a scream, and he starts to shake as Amazo begins to loosen his grip. Damien tells Jonathan, we have about 8 seconds before we can re-engage. Jonathan flies behind Cyborg, ripping Amazo off, and then Damien catches Cyborg, setting him on the ground. Damien looks at Cyborg and tells him, all right, a simple reboot should resolve the issue and we'll get him back online. Cyborg doesn't answer, and Damien begins to kick his head, stating, father's contingency plan worked perfectly. I hate to say it, but I'm impressed. Jonathan flies back down, asking, what do you mean? Damien says, my father keeps records of how to take down every leaguer should the need ever come. I gambled that he'd keep an updated copy locally on his uniform, and I was right. Jonathan then asks, wait, your dad has plans to destroy his teammates? And Damien asks, your father doesn't? Jonathan then says, dad keeps their birthdays in his calendar. Cyborg begins rubbing his head, asking what happened, and Damien tells him that he used a neural pulse from Batman's uniform to give him a transient ismic attack. Cyborg stops and then shouts, you gave me a stroke? And Damien says, well, technically a TIA is a mini stroke, but yes, the stroke shorted out the Amazo AI. Just then, Superman and Batman walk up, and Superman says that they are in need of a new sitter, and Batman stares. Jonathan yells, wait, we can explain! A few moments later, Diana says that the children did well. They'll hang on to the Amazo armor for now. Cyborg walks over to Jonathan and Damien, telling them that they're better at this than their dads are, but their dads don't make his head hurt nearly as much. Jonathan starts rubbing his head, and he asks, did you hear that? I said we were good! We saved the Justice League! As everyone begins to head out, Batman looks at Damien and he asks, so, you gave one of the Justice League members a stroke? And Damien tells him, yes, I did. Worked just as you thought. Superman begins to laugh. You did really well today. Cyborg is right. You're on your way to becoming better than your dads. Batman then smiles, putting his hand on Damien's shoulder, stating, I can see it, a little bit further down the road. And Damien asks, how much further? And Batman tells him, much further. Damien smiles, telling him, it's nice of you to say that. I agree completely. But from now on, we can both enjoy just being your sons. And in a future time, in a future place, and another day, and another hour, an old man shuts the book, and the little girl says, that can't be it, can it? And the boy says, there has to be more. The old man places the book back in the shelf, telling them, you know that there are. They flew home, went to school, tinkered with the mystery cube that turned out to be a real pain in the... And the little girl floats, stating, I am not going to bed until you give me one more story. And the little boy yells, yeah, the Super Sons did a lot after that. The old man grabs another book, labeled, The Adventures of the Super Sons, Volume 2. And the man says, fine, but if your parents ask, you have to promise to pretend that I didn't tell you a thing. They're older now, and they got tired of hearing this stuff. Now are you sure you're ready for what's next? Because the Super Sons sure as heck weren't. As the young Jonathan Kent smiles, tossing a piece of popcorn into his mouth, he says that he's sorry that it took so long. The place was a little farther than he thought. There's a sudden crash, and John continues eating, asking if he's sure that he didn't want any help. He did learn from the best. And as Damian Wayne swings out of the way of being hit by a giant statue of Superman, he yells, hey, fine, stop stuffing your damn face and help me take down your dad. John flies up. First, this is not my dad. It's a statue. Second, does Batman know how much you curse nowadays? But as John joins the fight, Damian manages to break away, telling John to keep the statue busy for a bit. The signal that he was tracking ends nearby, and it's most likely what's controlling the statue. Damian looks around and sees a small work shed. He kicks in the door and within seconds comes back out with a man tied up, stating that he's probably the one driving that thing, right? The man yells that he will never be defeated by a child. John then says, hey, that's the puppeteer my dad showed me pictures of. But before John could finish, he's punched and Damian takes the small figure of the statue, asking, what are you planning on doing? Do you even have a plan? Puppeteer shouts that he will get rich after this display of his anima citronic technology. Damien looks at him, blah, blah, blah. You should have just sold it then. After having a little bit of fun using the statue to step on John, Damien breaks the figure, stating, I really could get addicted to this. Puppeteer then asks if they can at least tell their dads how good his invention was. But before they could respond, the police and the other citizens arrived to see what happened. Damien pulls John aside, telling him that the fun is over. They need to go. Later, under Morrison Bay, John enters the hideout, stating that after Kid Amazo tore a hole through the hull, he thought he'd never get back down here. Damien finishes his repairs, stating that the Justice League has gone through dozens of HQs. Wait, what is that? Soda? John sets the cases of soda down, telling him that his mom and dad doesn't let him drink soda at home, so... John, that's way too much sugar! What's with your new belt? Oh, my dad gave it to me. He said he wasn't going to use it anymore since he changed his uniform. Cool, right? It even has Wi-Fi, so now I'm a flying hotspot. After telling John that he would never call a belt cool, he mentions that there's a monster loose at the Mall of Metropolis. Seems mindless, but people could get hurt. John begins to get excited and yells out, "You know what that means, right?" "Please, no." "It's the summer of super!" Damien says that he will pay him $8 million to stop saying it like that. A few moments later at the mall, a hairy caveman-looking person roars as he picks up a car full of people throwing it. But John quickly catches it, stating that it's a brainless monster like him. He doesn't realize that he can actually hurt people. The man laughs. "Actually, I'm well aware of my actions and the end results." Damien gets ready to jump in, but before he could, he shot out of the air as the bindings begin to wrap themselves around him from head to toe. The hairy man then grabs John. One wrong move and Kid Deadshot will put another one right between the peepers of your friend. John struggles, telling them that if they hurt him, I will tear, but the hairy man throws John at Damien. "Don't worry, I got something for you two." John whispers, asking if Robin can hear him, but a voice tells him that they don't need to worry about names or code names here. John looks up to see a group of child counterparts to some of the League's most fearsome villains, with its leader, a miniature Lex Luthor. "I would like to introduce you guys to the gang. You've already met Shaggy Boy. Say hellos to Ice Princess, Kid Deadshot, Brainiac 6, and back from the grave, my bestest pal, Joker Jr." Joker Jr. laughs. "We don't need a backstory." Rexy and Rex laugh. "Of course not, JJ. I'm pretty sure John has enough questions. For example, why is he being attacked by kids who look like the planet's greatest heroes? And what, pray tell, does Rex Luthor have in his mysterious container? And just what in the world will gold kryptonite do to me?" Suddenly, John feels his powers quickly fading, and Rex says that he hates the fake drama, so he's going to cut to the chase. "The truth is, we're not from here. Our home is light years away. We're just such big fans of yours. And fans of, what do you call them, the villains? Anyway, this is gold kryptonite, and it's some of the rarest stuff in the universe. Theory is that it drains Kryptonians' powers completely." John struggles to even try speaking, and Rex looks at him. "It looks like it's not even a theory now. Bet it feels weird, huh?" Rex lifts his fist into the air, punching John. "Don't worry, it'll only hurt for a second." As John takes the hit, he is pushed back without taking any damage and looks down, realizing that the belt has a force field. "My dad's the greatest." Brainiac 6 says that it's strange. It appears the boy's belt is equipped with a hard light auto protection mechanism, and he's calling it Dad. Shaggy Boy says, "No, dummyack. His dad gave him the belt." And Ice Princess asks, "Should we go help our fearless leader, Shaggy Boy?" Rex punches again. "I don't need any help. My power glove is all I need. This Kryptonian's powerless inside. I just need to break through." But as Rex swings, John jumps out of the way. "You're from another planet, so maybe you just need some pointers on how we handle things here. You may have sapped my powers with that gold kryptonite, but I definitely don't need them to take care of some cosplaying alien wannabes." Just then, John is shot in the back with a laser, and Kid Deadshot says, "There is so much blabbing in this world, it's amazing anything gets done." While this is going on, Joker Jr. removes the bindings from Damien, asking, "Are you watching?" "Of course not. Seriously, you're gonna want to see this. So how about we cut right to the big surprise?" Rex walks back to their ship. "Yes, good idea. We were just planning on taking over the powerless Kryptonian body to get what we needed, but the force field is a slight hurdle.
So instead, we'll just control him by other means, like a puppet.
As Rex pulls and throws Puppeteer out, John says, "You think I'm gonna let some third-rate bad guy use me in some sort of plan?" But Joker Jr. pushes the ray gun to Damien's head.
Of course you will, otherwise blammo.
Puppeteer takes out another small device and begins to control John, and even as he struggles, Puppeteer tells them,
It's pointless, the energy field is moving, he's just along for the ride.
Rex says that is some tech. He wants a complete rundown on it after this is done, JJ.
You'll have to wrap up your present and put it away for later.
JJ reactivates the bindings, telling him,
You heard the man.
but before Damien could be completely rewrapped, he leans down whispering,
You've got to help me. I'm not what you think I am.
Rex then gets everyone on board, and after a short flight to the Arctic, Rex tells John to remember,
Just walk in and don't say a word.
As John is let out and begins to walk into the Fortress of Solitude, Kid Deadshot says that this planet sure has everything. And Rex tells him that that's why he chose it.
It has an abundance of riches.
John then says, yeah, it's also rich with heroes who are gonna kick your butts back across the galaxy. After a little bit of walking, John steps up to a podium where a cube hangs suspended and he asks, what is this?
Rex yells, That's it exactly! Right where I last left it. Now bring it to me and we can all go back home.
As they get back to the ship, Rex says that the object is called the Hypercube. It's one of the oldest objects in the universe. It's a gateway, giving one instant access to 8 dimensions. This will help them greatly as the gang extends its influence across the known universe. But first, they have an extra passenger to dispose of. Shaggy Boy grabs the Puppeteer as the Puppeteer is yelling for them to wait. Rex then grabs his blaster, going on about how Puppeteer could just be a puppet. But as John is listening, he forces himself to move, and as Rex pulls the trigger, John manages to jump in the way of the blast, taking the hit for the Puppeteer. JJ then says that takes care of that. 2 powerless kids can't get into too much trouble. He'll go ahead and take him back to the other kid. Rex says that it's a good idea.
Do that while I take care of the Puppeteer.
As John is dragged away, there's a gunshot heard across the ship. But as JJ continues bringing John down the hallway, a door opens up, and inside, Damien is wrestling himself free. JJ tells him to stop.
You're just making it tighter. We copied the tech from a villain on our world called Copperhead. It constricts the more you move. Besides, you have work to do. You need to get your friend back up and punching and fighting. I know it's hard to believe, especially from someone who looks like me, but we really need your help.
As Damien becomes free, he jumps at Joker Jr., slamming him into the wall.
I am not gonna fall for that trick.
Damien then hits him with Joker Jr. yelling,
Hey, if I'm gone too long, Rex is gonna notice. Please, just listen. There's more going on here than you realize. We're not just villains trying to open up the multiverse.
Damien holds his punches, telling Joker Jr. that he has 20 seconds. So Joker Jr. explains that they're from the Cygnus system and they've been watching Earth for years. Their entire culture is built around celebrating their world. Rex, however, imagines it all much differently. His dark, twisted perception of their world has led him to create a much grimier story about himself. He used it to inspire himself to follow in the footsteps of their greatest failures, their villains. Rex killed his parents to try and drive him crazy, to turn him into a Joker that he could team up with, and when that didn't work, he took things a step further. Rex created all of these kid villains. The others are loyal to Rex, but he isn't. Rex wants to use that cube to find even more who will join him. He wants to destroy their worlds, making them into the stories he sees in his head. I can't prove anything that I'm telling you, but I can give you this. As Joker Jr. holds out a box, Damien asks what is it, and JJ tells him that it's the case with the synthetic kryptonite. Brainiac 6 made it. He overheard him tell Rex that the effects can be reversed if necessary. So Damien asks how does it work, and JJ tells him he doesn't know. He just needs him to be the heroes that inspired him from a far-off galaxy. A few moments later on the bridge, there's a warning that an escape pod just launched, and Rex looks around asking, where the hell is Joker Jr.? As Kid Deadshot and Ice Princess check the escape pods, they see a message from JJ, and it simply says, I quit.
Joker Jr. is a traitor, Rex!
Rex then hurries to the holding cells, but inside, Damien is tinkering with the synthetic kryptonite, stating that something is happening. John's eyes begin to shine both red and blue. It hurts, Damien! It feels like I'm being ripped in two! And as the room fills with light, Shaggy Boy pulls open the doors to the holding cells as a blue version and a red version of John stare at each other, asking, Who are you? Damien continues to examine the kryptonite, stating that it turned red.
Any idea what that does, John? A short while in space, JJ sighs, stating that he did it. He's finally free of Rex, and it doesn't matter where he ends up, as long as he can be himself again. But then there was a warning alarm, and before JJ realized it, his escape pod was being shot and he was being flung into space. But while holding his breath, JJ reaches inside of his jacket, pressing a button. Back on the ship, Kid Deadshot laughs, telling himself, "Blam! Gotcha, sucker! Joker Jr. is handled, Rex. I'm an even better shot than the real Deadshot." Rex tells him, "Good, now get your butt over here. We got a problem." Damian puts himself between the two Johns as they're arguing over which one is the real one, telling them, "Stop! We gotta focus! The gang's going to pounce!" But the two Johns both yell at him to shut up. Rex, meanwhile, tells Shaggy Boy to grab him, and Shaggy Boy asks which one, and Rex shouts, "Just grab one!" Damian says something about splitting his personality must have made him naturally adverse to each. But Red yells that Blue is just a faker. "Can't you tell by looking at him?" And Blue shouts that Red is a stupid jerk. "I can't wait to punch him." Damian then covers both of their mouths. "Look, Superboys, until this wears off, we gotta work together." The two argue that they're not going to, and why should they? And as Shaggy Boy attacks, Damian says, "That's why!" Damian throws a batarang to keep Shaggy Boy back, but Red and Blue go back to arguing to the point of Red actually punching Blue. Rex then punches Blue back towards him, telling him, "Thanks, Red, enemy of my enemy, etc., etc." Blue goes flying over and Red ducks. "Hey, you kinda hit me!" Damian and Red then charge for Rex, but there's an ice blast that shoots by, freezing them both in place, and Ice Princess says that the stupid heroes are best served on the rocks. Damian shouts that they're messing with the wrong heroes from the wrong planet. "And let me show you firsthand how to handle alien wannabes." Rex tells them that he has studied their planet for months. They will be better in every single way, and he's going to start by performing their planet's oldest trick: killing a Robin. Kid Deadshot walks up, pointing his laser at Damian. "I'm sorry to do this. I was one of your biggest fans." But suddenly the ice melts as Damian and Red fall. "Why is my butt so hot?" Red asks, and Blue sits up laughing as his eyes cool down, stating that his butt is just red, just like the rest of him. Damian quickly grabs the synthetic kryptonite, telling him, "I am never having kids. Keep the gang busy, Superboys. I'm gonna find a way to get this kryptonite machine working and get you back together." Red and Blue jump to their feet and charge in, and as Blue says that Robin told him to keep the gang busy, Red argues, stating that he was talking to both of them. Rex runs out of the room and radios to Brainiac 6 that the human boy has escaped and is possibly heading in his direction. Brainiac 6 says that he calculated that as a risk an hour ago. There's nothing that he can, but in that moment there's a sudden shake in the ship and Brainiac 6 falls out of his chair, caused by a giant hole that the Superboys, namely Blue, ripped in the hole. Brainiac 6 gets up. "I will scan the cameras to locate Robin." But before he can, Damian jumps into the room, kicking him, telling him, "Good news! You found me!" Damian pins him down, telling him that he's going to tell him how to get his partner back to the way he was, or he'll be thrown out of the nearest window. Brainiac 6 laughs. "From what I have observed of your kind, you will never kill anyone intentionally." Rex begins to sneak up, but as he goes to swing, Damian rolls out of the way, allowing Rex to deliver his punch directly to Brainiac 6's stomach. Back with the others, Red closes up the hatch, stating that the container door should hold for a few. Blue asks, "What, are you breathing hard? What a wuss." But there's another shake of the ship, and Rex says that it's Cygnus. They're closing in on its troposphere. Damian hurries over to the controls, stating that the navigation system is busted. Where is the manual override? And Rex says that it won't be enough at this velocity. Back with the boys, they continue to argue when Damian comes over the comms, telling them that they amazingly took out the navigation controls. So they're basically in an accelerated freefall towards a major metropolitan area. He has no idea what power levels they have, but they need to gather these gang losers and get them off the ship while he tries to steer it away from the city. But Red asks Blue if he's thinking what he's thinking. Blue says of course he is. Robin is so lucky to work with them. As the ship continues its descent, Red flies out to pull up on the stern while Blue pushes on the bow. Within a few moments, the spaceship flies down into Cygnus, but with the help of Red and Blue, they help bring the ship down in one piece, even though it has crashed. Damian steps out, calling to Red and Blue, asking if they can hear him, because they didn't. Red stumbles forward, telling him that he's here, but he doesn't feel right, like something's missing. Damian asks where's Blue, and they see him down at the wreckage, not moving.
Red says that it must have been the reverse thrusters. He caught them full on, but still managed to save them. So Damien tells Red to go find the kryptonite device now. Rex appears asking, "Oh, you mean this little thing? Afraid it's broken. Looked like a hero died today, the first of several." Damien begins to ask what does he mean, and Shaggy Boy stomps on the synthetic kryptonite box. Rex begins to laugh, but that's when there's a beep beep and a voice calls out, "Hey, Super Sons, get it." Damien and Red look up to see the space cabbie flying over. "Heard you need a ride back to Earth." Red quickly picks up Blue, asking, "Is that a taxi?" John jumps on, telling him to shut up and get into the space taxi or we're all dead. Rex asks, how is Joker Jr. alive? And Space Cabbie begins to state that they must be friends of the Clown Kid. "So where are you guys headed?" Damien tells him to just drive, you fool. The taxi takes off and Ice Princess asks what is the plan now. Rex Luthor jumps back down into the wreckage, stating that there's no need to spend days chasing around children who have no idea how to get home. While capturing Robin and Superboy was a happy side effect of the alien villain's trip to the Earth. Let's remember what we're all really here for, the Hypercube. Later, 18 million miles away, the space taxi keeps jumping in and out of hyperdrive while Damien tries to keep control of the wheel, yelling at JJ, which is Joker Jr., telling him that he will tear him apart while Blue is busy vomiting all over the place. Joker Jr. yells, "I saved you! I didn't have to do that!" And Red pushes Damien back, telling him to calm down. One half of him is already throwing up. They gotta get their bearings and not act like maniacs. Damien takes a deep breath, looking at Joker Jr. "You know, it would have been great for you to have showed up before my friend was split into two. John, stop fighting with yourself!" Damien grabs Red and begins to smack his head into Blue, stating, "Can't you just, absorb each other or something?" Blue begins to yell, "Ow, that's not how this works, Damien!" Red then shoves Damien off, telling him, "Even though we are two halves, I can feel everything that you're doing to Blue, and right now, Blue is sacrificing himself by taking all of the pain for the two of us alone. What a hero." Damien scoffs, "Oh my god, Kent, you're such a goody two-shoes. You're inspiring yourself!" Space Cabbie begins to wipe the vomit off. "I would really love to get you guys some medical help, but we're way off the map. I might be able to triangulate where we're going as long as you don't." Suddenly, Blue begins to groan in pain, and as he does, he kicks the back of Space Cabbie's chair, sending him jumping in and out of hyperdrive, nearly running into Lobo and Guy Gardner, the Green Lantern. But the constant jumping sends the taxi off course, crashing it into a planet with Space Cabbie yelling, "Do you see what you did? You blew a neutron rod on the engine. I knew I should have never picked you two up." As everyone gets out, Space Cabbie looks under the hood, telling them, "Okay, that's just great. I can see the theoretical particle leak from here." Damien holds up Red and Blue, asking how long is this going to take. His friend are sick. Space Cabbie says that he's going to get to work. It'll take as long as it takes. It's not rocket science. Clown Boy here is gonna help me. Since you're the reason why we're even in this mess to begin with, Joker Jr., you three can head over to that house over on the hill and see if you can find a communicator so that I can call dispatch. And if we're lucky, we might have some kind of a machine that'll put your friends back together. Damien looks up. That doesn't sound like a good idea. Maybe I should go alone. But Blue tells him that there's no way that him and Red are going to let Damien go alone. We gotta protect each other. Red decides to chime in. Blue is right. We're in this together. It's what heroes do, Damien. So Red gives a thumbs up, and Blue gives him one back. You're such an inspiration. Damien scoffs as they begin to walk towards the abandoned-looking building. But as they walk, Damien says, "Okay, so it was red kryptonite, right? That's some kind of fake version? Your father's secret league file says that stuff like this wears off eventually. Your dad dealt with this sort of thing before. Maybe. But if it's artificial red K, who knows what the rules are? Well, we have to get you guys back together. There's no way the universe can deal with two John Kents." As the three of them reach the top, they look down to try and wave to JJ, and Space Cabbie says that they made it. But with their backs turned, they don't see the door to the home opening and several pairs of hands reaching for them and grabbing at them. A short while later, Space Cabbie says that this should get things up and running. He can at least get him and his buddies where they need to go. "Can you still see your friends?" JJ says, fortunately, no, and then kicks Space Cabbie into the trunk, slamming it shut. "I did my good deed. The Earthlings are still breathing. If they want to save the universe from Rex Luthor, they're on their own." JJ sits in the taxicab's driver's seat and jumps off-world.
But back up at the abandoned building, Damien turns on his light asking if they're still there. John says that he's there. And as the light shines on him, Damien says that this was a mistake. Can you guys get back up? I can, and I think I'm back together. What? Where's the other Superboy? John gets up checking himself. I don't know, but I'm all back together in one piece. I guess it wore off? Either that or it had something to do with whatever grabbed us. But if you're back together, use that supervision to find us a way out of here, John. As John activates his supervision, the lights turn on and a voice yells out, "No one leaves the house of secret mysteries." John begins to use his heat vision on the reaching hands. Guys, the house is talking! Of course it is. I wouldn't expect any less. The two begin to dodge the shadow hands until they make their way deeper into the house, and then all of the hands retreat and they hear voices out of the other room. Damien asks who is it, and the voice gets louder, and one asks, "Jonathan, are you all right?" And the other responds, "I'm fine, Damien. Hey, looks like we have a couple of visitors." Down at the foot of the stairs, two older versions of John and Damien stand there. Older Damien looking at them. "And who are you supposed to be?" I did not see this coming," the younger Damien says. As both pairs stare at each other, young John says, "Man, getting old sucks, huh?" And young Damien asks, "Are you really that gullible? There is no way that this is our future selves." "Never say never, Damien. Watch." He flies over to his older self asking him, "What's your favorite?" And before he could finish, the older John agrees with them, stating, double chocolate in a cup with chocolate sprinkles on the bottom and the top." "Damien, it's really me!" "Got it. So older you eats like you're a 10-year-old. Of course he guessed right. And John yells out, "Because he is 10! John pokes old John's round belly, stating that the real mystery is how this happened. And old John tells him that the truth is that his mom's cooking catches up with them after a few years. Both young and old Damien yell out, "Give it a rest!" And old John says, "Man, it's like looking into an angry mirror." Both Johns go back and forth about their favorite things, with old Damien asking how they even got here. The younger version explains, "We walked in after the house attacked us. Do you remember that because you're from the future?" And old Damien says he doesn't know. "We were just always here, waiting for a door." Just then a door materializes and the two run forward, and the younger and the older versions begin to declare where they're going. As they step through, they enter a white space of nothingness and the door slams shut behind them. Outside, old John asks if he's sure that he doesn't want to know about his first kiss. And young John yells out, "Ew, no way!" And old John tells him that it begins with an L. Suddenly there's a crash next to them as both young and old Damiens slam into the ground, with younger John asking, "How did you get up there? You and Man Wonder ran through those doors and you came falling out of the roof." Damien looks up. See, there's no damage to the ceiling and the doors are also now gone. They go through a bizarre adventure in which they discover that nothing is real, but real at the same time. Flinging themselves out of the house, they begin to see the future that their older selves have led. They see that they had full families and full lives, and they realize that this was a chance for them to call their own shots, to not live in the shadows of their fathers. But knowing that none of this is truly real, younger John and Damien reject this future, waking up on an operating table. An alien named Kane sighs. "Self-awareness is such a tricky proposition. But the Wonder Machine does thrive on it, making impossible possible, requiring a sentience that feels want and need. That's you, by the way. You're the Wonder Machine, the beating heart of the center of this planet, pulling dreams out of the air and making them come just so nearly true. I am quite fortunate that both of you had landed here, that I was finally able to find permanent residents to give me sustenance, and I can do away with my artificial caretakers, figments of someone's imagination. John Kent, Damian Wayne. I will now make your dreams come true forever." Inside of the machine, the older versions of John and Damien look at themselves, and John says that he's sorry, but the Wonder Machine only gives them their heart's desire. Damien realizes that they're trapped in a dream state, and the older version of John and Damien only exists because they were dreamed up, and there's nothing that they can do about it. So the two team up, because they realize that the only way out of this is to shatter the fake reality, and they burst through back into normal reality with Damien stating, "You never thought that your own creations would turn on you, did you?" Another alien, LaBelle, asks what's going on, and Kane asks, "Isn't it obvious? They've inspired themselves. Now they're going to destroy everything that the machine has built." Old John begins to tear the machine down. "There's a whole lot of living ahead of you." And as the younger versions begin to wake up, John asks what's going on. The older versions tell them there's no time for questions. They need to go on and haul butt back to the surface. Leave this make-believe reality, this perfect world. Damien tries to save the older versions, but since they're just figments of their imagination that were created through this Wonder Machine, they realize they can't be saved. The older versions continue to battle against the two aliens as young John grabs young Damien and they burst out of the roof of the house just in time to avoid being caught in the blast as the house with the Wonder Machine and the dream reality implodes upon itself. And as the two return to the crater, they sit down and Damien asks if they should try to hang on to as much of what happened as they can, if only to feel better about their future, and that they shouldn't forget the most important lesson. John asks, what is that? And Damien pokes his stomach, telling him, you better start watching what you eat. John laughs, stating that they got a bigger problem than his middle-aged waistline. Like, how the heck are they gonna get off this rock? Damien falls on his back. Yeah, I don't know, but how about we figure that one out tomorrow? As the night falls, Damien takes to the shadows to scout, and as he lands on a branch, John shouts, Robin, would you please stop hunting the fruit? After throwing a battering into a piece of fruit that John is holding, Damien says that he needs to stay vigilant, which means constant training. John says that he gets it, but he's very scared and they need to find themselves dinner on this strange planet. John tosses the broken fruit to Damien, who asks how they can be so sure that they can eat this, and what if he can track some sort of alien parasite. At that moment, a small monkey-like animal jumps out of the bushes, snatching Damien's fruit, yelling hookah hookah. John chases after him, telling him, come on, there might be more. So John follows the creature and Damien follows John, and they reach a clearing in the woods and find a large monster ready to eat the small creature. John yells that they need to, but Damien tells him, I know, save the day, just like we practiced. John leaps in, punching the monster as Damien swings in, grabbing the creature. The monster turns back, hitting John, and Damien tells him to use his super yelling or something. Really? I don't have that power. It's a predator! Scare him! Howl back! John turns over on his back, yelling, John, Paul, George, Ringo! I came in like a wrecking ball! I'm Gumpy, darn it! Shazam! The monster stares for a moment and then whispers as it runs off. Oh crap, that worked! I'm gonna have to try that more often. He then looks over and sees Damien holding the small creature. Look, I made a friend. Well, we should probably camp here for the night. I'll go make the fire. And as the two begin to fall asleep, they quickly wake up, as a voice tells them that they have 5 seconds before this mangy, diseased beast is killed. Damien jumps to his feet and John holds him back as Rex Luthor holds hookah. Unless you want to trade, the two of you for one, whatever this is. Rex tosses the two power-dampening neck pieces. You might be wondering how I found you. There was a big energy spike from the planet's core that you'd have to be blind to not see. Now put these on. As John and Damien put their collars on, John says that he better keep his promise. And Rex says to relax. The dampeners will not only scramble Superboy's powers, but they'll also immobilize their central nervous systems. So he'll have their complete attention and they can hear everything that's coming next. Their little escapade with Joker Jr. has caused him to push back his timeline, but as with many things, he is a master of improvisation. Once he delivers their bodies to their namesakes, they will start to take the gang seriously, and together they will rise up and take down the heroes in a bloody and brutal showdown. With the heroes dismembered and the villains united, he will strike and prove that he is much better at this than they ever hoped to be. So the bad news is that you're going to die. The good news is that you won't have to live to see your future. Neither of you will see this monkey dog thingy again either. But just before Rex Luthor could vaporize hookah, he's blasted in the back with a man wearing a bat belt, a ripped up Superman cape, and a Thangarian chest armor walks up. Good girl. Good hunting. Now which one of these little punks blew up my Wonder Machine? Because you're gonna have to answer to Tommy tomorrow, and I'm one ticked off Planeteer. Unable to talk, Damien and John begin to pull off their collars, and Tommy walks over stating that he hid the Wonder Machine on the outskirts of this sector for a reason. Now the beings that he stole it from are going to be coming here knowing that it's missing, and it'll take them 3 ticks to figure out who did it. He was trying to save the whole damned universe over here. He picks up John and Damien and tells Hookah to bring the hairless one onto the ship. He knows just where to drop these delinquents off. As they get onto Tommy Tomorrow's ship, he opens up the hatch, tossing Rex into the hold with JJ, and he asks, yeah, you guys know each other, right? Chrome-domed ditched his painted smiley friend just as he landed. Saw the whole thing. Damien continues to struggle and try to speak, but Tommy just tells him, Attitude despair. You're definitely from Earth. Later in Tommy's ship, Tommy says that he'll take off the vocal restrainers now, and hopefully, they'll have a good enough story. John explains everything that just happened, from their adventure of being kidnapped by the Junior League of Villains, how they ended up on the planet with the space cabbie, how they worked with the Wonder Machine, and then their older versions defeated the aliens. And Tommy says, all right, that's a nice story, and I'm a bit of a writer myself, but I know fantasy when I hear it. No way two children from Earth, of all the dungholes, managed to destroy one of the most powerful weapons in the universe in a day. Good news is you're gonna have plenty of time to come up with new stories. This is Tommy tomorrow. Helix code Twilight 1952. The voice over the comms says, copy that, Double T. What did you bring us this time? Tommy tells them 2 kids, Terran, one genetically powered Ultra Class, the other is wound tight and sharp. The voice says, excellent. They'll be right at home on Tarkin Galados. Tommy explains that it's a whole planet that's a prison for criminals who think they can go around murdering people. You 2 kids are gonna love it.
Wonder Woman has a daughter. Her name is Trinity, and she was created to match up with the Super Sons, Damian, the son of Batman, and John Kent, the son of Superman. These are a couple of her stories, as they are telling little short stories about her and the backups of Wonder Woman. First, we begin with the Wonder Woman 3 backup. Within Wayne Manor, Damian shakes his head at his best friend. Absolutely not. And John shrugs. The dam is breaking. I can hear it cracking. 40,000 people, and I'm Superman. He points out. Neither of them is listening to the young Amazonian who is staring at the homemade mac and cheese before her. I don't want mac and cheese. I want pizza, she grumbles as she glares at the food on her fork. First, you're not Superman. At best, you're Superboy. Damian points out, explaining that there are plenty of other super people who can save the dam. The 2 of them are watching Wonder Woman's daughter, Lizzie. The bat signal is up, and you don't hear me leaping off into a room. First, I've been Superman for 5 years. What are you even talking about? I'll be back in a sec, having saved very many people. You're the son of Batman, the grandson of the demon, and she's a 5-year-old girl, John tells him, motioning to Trinity, who is getting angrier at her food. I want pizza, she shouts, swinging her fork around, throwing a chunk of mac and cheese at Damian's face. You'll be fine, John laughs. Damian turns to Lizzie, trying to calm her down, and when he turns back, John has disappeared. Crap! Damian says with a sigh, hanging his head. Lizzie cheers, echoing the curse. And shortly the pair are downstairs as Robin finishes getting dressed. If he's going out, I'm going out. Father being in another dimension does not mean that Gotham will be unprotected, he tells Lizzie, who is sitting on the hood of the Batmobile in her own Robin costume. Remember, if anyone asks, I'm Robin and you're Wonder Robin, she says with a cheer, and the pair venture off into the city. Robin begins to tell her all of his rules of crime fighting with an underage partner. And a short time later, Lizzie watches from the shadows as Damian fights against Killer Croc. What do I do? She calls out as Robin dodges a blow, kicking Croc in the chest. Superhero lesson 37. In a team-up situation, if your partner and obviously better have the situation handled, allow him to handle it. He calls out as he ducks under another attack. But Lizzie shakes her head, stepping out. I think I should kick it. Robin ducks underneath Croc's teeth and he looks back at her. Lizzie, remember lesson 23, a very important lesson, Damian shouts, but Lizzie isn't listening. She drops into her fighting stance just like her mother taught her. Killer the Croc, prepare for the kick of Wonder Robin, she shouts as she leaps through the air, kicking Croc hard enough to send him through a wall. Lizzie stares in triumph, and Damian joins her. Lesson 23, remember all of the other vital lessons because I'm working to teach you. And if you don't listen, you're going to end up doing something stupid that gets us in a heap of trouble, he says with a sigh as he shakes his head. Lizzie looks at him sheepishly. Can I go back to sitting in front on the way home? I swear I won't press the eject button again, even if it was funny when you were flying, she says with a smile. Later, John returns to the manor to find Damian and Lizzie on the couch, covered in mud from his adventure, and he tells John the damn thing was more complicated than he thought. How'd this go? He asks, motioning to the sleepy Lizzie. She kicked Killer Croc in such a manner that we were required to bring him to Dr. Midnight. He's going to survive. Doc's fairly sure. Damian says as he looks at the sleeping child, and John sits on the couch leaning back. Maybe we don't tell Diana about all this. He whispers in, Damian scoffs. And you call yourself Superman. Does the S stand for subterfuge? Damian questions. In the backup of Wonder Woman 4, we have another story. The Fortress of Solitude. Damian steps into the computer room, toweling himself off after his training session. "Where's Lizzie?" he asks John, who motions to the monitors in front of him. "Dad's got me on monitor duty while the Justice League are out of the dimension. Thought you were watching her." But Damian shakes his head, and John shrugs, pointing out that she can't get into that much trouble in the Fortress of Solitude. But then they realize they're in the Fortress of Solitude, and they both stand bolt upright. Damian begins to curse. "She's Black Mercying us again, isn't she?" He curses, and John whirls on him. "This is your fault! I was at the monitor!" Meanwhile, in a perfect world, Lizzie is now Queen of the Amazons, looking down on both John and Damian, who kneel before her, pledging their loyalty. She orders them to stand, but Damian shakes his head. "We are unworthy of such an act, Your Grace." Lizzie nods as she stands before her throne. "True, but I am to enjoy our contest today, and if I am to demonstrate my dominance, it's best that you two at least start on your feet." Back in the fortress, the boys find Lizzie on the floor, the Black Mercy wrapped around her chest. Damian whirls on John. "Well, you're always saying you're Superman. This is a science fiction Superman thing. So science fixes it, Superman." John nods his head, thinking. "Right. Yes, I am Superman. Okay." He leans in, shouting to Lizzie that what she is seeing isn't real and that she needs to come back to him. "Please!" he finishes. Damian stares at him in astonishment. What was that? "What are you doing?" he demands, pointing out that he doesn't think that saying please will get the alien plant that is embedded in her consciousness to free up. S stands for stupid, right? That's why you say it means hope. Because you're too stupid to know what sound an S makes, Damian demands. Back in her perfect world, Lizzie is fighting against the boys, easily besting them, knocking them to the ground as they continue to tell her how amazing she is. In the fortress, John has another idea. He can't touch the Black Mercy because it will attach itself to him, so it can absorb his hope. But you're Damian Wayne. You don't have any hope, you don't have any joy. You're all sad and moping and whatever. It can't feed on you. You can touch it and pull it off. Damian ponders for a moment before leaning down. Okay, we do this, then I kill you, Damian says quietly, and John puts a hand on his friend's shoulder. Don't listen to what everyone says about you, Damian. You're the real hero. In her mind, Lizzie knocks John and Damian to the ground again, standing over them. The boys look at her and surrender. Yes? Yes what? She says, gasping, realizing that the real John and Damian would never give up. In the real world, Damian is holding onto the plant as John pulls them both. If I'm wrong and it attaches to you, you'll get trapped for eternity. I just want you to know that I'm super sorry about that, John says as he pulls harder. John! Does the S stand for slacking off? Pull, damn it, it's Lizzie! Damian shouts back at his friend, grunting through the pain. Finally, with a final pull, the Black Mercy is ripped away from Lizzie's chest and she sits up in a painful surprise. A short while later, the trio are sitting on the couch, trying to recover from their ordeal. So, Lizzie, the Black Mercy, what'd you see? John asks, and Damian scoffs, stating that it was probably a world of peace. Yeah, peace. That pretty much captures it, she says with a sigh. In the back of Wonder Woman issue 5, we have another story. Sometime in the future, the land of Themyscira, Lizzie tightens the straps on her kangaroo saddle. I didn't get permission from Queen Mom to have boys in paradise sit here and keep arguing. We're here and we're deciding this in the only fair way, the Amazon way, she says with a smile to her brothers. My choice for the name of our triumphant trio is the best and is the one. She pulls herself up onto the saddle. Picture it, boys. I'm standing here with my two brothers behind me, slightly smaller than me, and in big bold letters, Trinity's Trinity, she says with joy. But Damian shakes his head. No, he says simply. Lizzie stares at him for a moment. Wow, what an argument, D. I mean, how can I counter such a reason? I guess we'll have to go through the whole rigmarole. The trio lines up on their mounts, preparing to kangaroo race for the right to name their trio. And Lizzie begins to count. Why do you get to count? He glances over at John. She's going to cheat. John shakes his head. Can't you for once have faith in people? And Lizzie waits until the pair aren't paying attention and her mount hops away madly. Do you ever tire of being wrong, John? Damian says as he spurs forward. No, I mean, yes! John shouts as he takes off after them, the pair surging after their practical sister, who's too busy looking back at the losers and not paying attention to where she's going. She turns as she sees the cliff coming up on them, but instead of slowing down, she spurs her mount forward. Come on, girl. I'm thinking the daughter of Jumpa isn't going to give up the chance to win this one, Lizzie says to the offspring of one of the Amazon's greatest kangaroos. The mount makes the jump, but it staggers on the landing, throwing Lizzie away. And when she opens her eyes, a concerned Damien and John are leaning over her. Lizzie, are you okay? John asks, and Damien looks at him in surprise. Are you seriously asking the coma patient if she's okay? This is the essential problem with invulnerability. It necessitates a thick skull. Damien sighs, but Lizzie opens her eyes, smiling at them. I win! She gets to her feet, realizing that the three of them are something different from their parents. Something different than the heroes that came before. She suggests that they name their trio Gen S. John looks at Damien. I like it. And Damien sighs, shaking his head. I am not getting back on a kangaroo. So a short time later, the trio sit in paradise, enjoying their cups of ambrosia. You know, the S actually is a river that wound through Krypton. John begins to state, but Damien sighs. Gen S, you see what you did, Lizzie? This is going to be him forever now. Damien says. But Lizzie just shrugs, sipping her drink. I don't mind, as long as it's with you boys.
And that was all of the Super Sons and the introduction to Trinity. Super Sons was a series that Benny and I both loved, and it's a big shame that they aged John and took all those potential stories from us. But what did you guys think? Let us know down below, like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Rest in peace, Benny.